This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 28. I am your host, Steve at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you by the IDP Guys Network. So, welcome back, my fantasy football friends and family. Let's climb the ladder of fantasy football together. So today we're going to be going through the entire week 4 slate with a very special guest, a repeat guest. He was on during the Kansas City Chiefs show from early August, if you remember that one. So we're going to bring him on in just a second. But what we're going to go through are all the games. It's going to be sectioned off basically by the primetime games, followed by some listener questions, the early Sunday slate, some listener questions, and then the later Sunday slate mixed in with a recap of the previous week of NFL action. So before we get into all that, let's bring on our guest. We have with us today Axton Harding, the Axe Man himself at Harden_3. He is a content creator with the IDP guys. You can check him out on the Waiver Wire show every Tuesday at noon. Is it, Axton?
Yep,
Every
noon
Tuesday at
Eastern.
noon. So perfect. So Axton, welcome back, and just want to know basically how you're doing, man.
Hey, not too bad. Thanks for having me back. I was surprised and excited when I saw you reached out. So I'm not doing too bad. I'm kind of hanging in there with being new to fatherhood. 2 weeks down, over 2 weeks, pushing full third, and it's taking a toll. But we're hanging in there. We're doing just fine. Couldn't be happier,
That's
honestly.
great to hear. That's great to hear. Yeah, it really is such a joyous time when you first become a parent, and then of course you get your little bumps in the road. The
Hmm.
little crying fits and then trouble sleeping and all that, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. But I don't need to tell you that. But yeah, that's really awesome, buddy. As Mike Sicoli says, who's your co-host there of the Waiver Wire show, you are killing it in life right now. So I would agree with that. So that's fantastic. Um, so basically, just want the listeners to know a couple things about you. One, how many leagues are you playing in this year, and what does your Sunday morning routine look like leading up to the games?
I'm actually not in near as many as you are. I think we kind of touched on this previously. I'm not even in half as many as you are. I actually upped it to about 10 this year. Uh, just me personally is just too much. More than that, it's just too much for me to manage effectively, and I want to be in every single league and trying to benefit every single one. And to me, it's just not realistic, at least for myself, to do any more than really that. But that consists of 3 redraft, 3 tournament leagues, and then 4 dynasty leagues.
Okay, yeah. No, I think that's a very good number. I would agree that I am finding that I'm in too many at this point. Last year my amount of dynasty leagues like quadrupled from one up to like, well, I guess technically four, what would be quadrupling up to five. But I think I joined like six last year. Then this next year, I'm thinking, well, I really don't want to add that many. Then I added on another six, so it just was like a really bad idea. Then just I already play in a lot of like redraft leagues. My home league is like a mix, like it's more of a keeper league, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
yeah, so 27 is a lot. I think 10 is a very healthy amount, because you can still have a pretty good amount of players that you can root for, but
Mhm.
it just doesn't all become mush, So at this
Right.
point, it is just kind of like mush where I can't really effectively seek out trades or trade partners. It's just kind of like, we'll just see what happens if, like, so I just can't pursue that in the same way as I used to. So I may have to scale back a bit. But then like you
Right.
said, you play in some of these tournament leagues where there's no trading anyway, like Scott Fishbowl, for example.
Mhm.
I know you're in that. You got one of the best avatars from the Scott Fishbowl avatar makers. I just absolutely love it. So everyone who's watching, go check out Axton on Twitter. Got a fantastic avatar, nice like Kansas City barbecue grill, like a flame, and then a nice axe right in
Got
the
the axe
flame.
going down.
It's perfect. It's
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. Yeah. No, so I like that. So 10 leagues. So on like a Sunday morning, um obviously when there's like late inactives, or like, when
Mhm.
there's some of those like surprise inactives, like what are you doing throughout the week to prepare for those changes? Are you kind of like tinkering throughout the week, or do you kind of just buckle down at that, half an hour, 20 minutes before kickoff, and you're just ready to make the switches, or what's that like for you?
Well, typically throughout the week, I'm kind of tinkering. Your Monday and Tuesday, you're targeting all your waiver targets, right? And then finally, when Wednesday comes and they open up, you're going back in and making and just seeing kind of who's out there now, who's everybody dropped and whatnot. Because believe it or not, like it was just before last week's games in one of my redraft leagues, Mark Cooper got dropped, so I picked him up, plugged him in for a quick 25 points, and helped me get a W last week. So uh, that's kind of my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, anyways. And then throughout the week, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on anybody that's injured, anyways. With the small amount of leagues, it's a little bit easier for me to navigate that, where you get a lot of players and you can almost kind of get numb and forget uh, oh man, I do have him about 3 or 4 leagues. I got to go back and sell him out because even me with 10 last week, I did miss Keenan. I kept Keenan Allen in one of my redraft leagues, and it did cost me, unfortunately. Looked like I'm doing
Ah,
well enough there, though, that I don't think it's gonna hurt me too bad. But yeah,
gotcha.
just kind of tinkering throughout the week. Keep an eye on those guys that are injured. And then Sunday, about an hour and a half, I think they released the injury report before the games. I'm kind of leading up to that point. I'm just kind of being mindful of the guys that play later. I have to make those decisions a little bit earlier, or at least prepare. Maybe pop someone in a flex spot or something like that, so I can swap them out. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing up until game time. At the same time, once I get everything kind of how I want it, I'm going into Discord, answering any start sit questions for our subscribers, IDP guys, and trying to get involved on Twitter and things like that, and just help out where I can.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. So obviously, when you're in less leagues, it opens up more opportunity for you to help other people out too. So I love that answer, and I appreciate you bringing up the Discord. That is a tremendous benefit of being a subscriber to the IDP guys. I know that's a very busy place, in a great way. A lot of fun channels, and it's a lot of serious trade talk and advice giving for the subscribers. So yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of analysts, me, Axton, and the rest of the staff at IDP guys were at your disposal all the time in that
Mm-hmm.
Discord. So it's really awesome. I know Axton himself is quite active in there, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, we
You
love
bring up,
seeing those subscribers use and abuse it, man. I hate
oh yeah,
seeing like we have 90 subscribers in there, and believe it or not, there's maybe like a select 10 to 20 of them that are really in there, on a regular basis. And we have 10, 15, 20 guys ready, at any point. And if we need to, we can you know, bump some shoulders and get more guys in there to help us out. But we're eager to answer questions.
in multiple time zones too, right? So
Oh
we're
yeah.
covered pretty much across the continental United States, as well as a couple in
In
the
England.
UK, in
Hmm.
England. That's right. Yeah, so all hours of the day, questions can be answered. So that's awesome. Yeah, one of those lineup adjustments I failed to make was I kind of had Julio Jones in a league as like a placeholder, and I even set like an alarm on my phone to swap him out for Cam Akers if he couldn't go. I'm thinking, okay, there's no Chris Godwin, there's no Mike Evans because of the suspension. It could be a decent like target opportunity for him, and game time came and passed. And I did not swap about. Fortunately, I did win that matchup by only 4 points. So Monday Night Football, I
Awesome.
was really, really sweating that out. But oh boy, I got it. So I really got bailed out, but by the fantasy football gods there. But never again will I disappoint them. But I mean
I
that's
hear you
of
there.
course not true. I'm gonna just shoot myself in the foot, more often than not. But anyway, yeah. So I love what you bring to the table here. I love those answers, and again, I think 10 leagues. I think the point of that discussion was 10 leagues is a very safe place to be. A very healthy balance there. So I love that. So we are just going to recap a little bit of the week 3 action here. So Axton, I'm just curious from your perspective, what were some of your biggest takeaways for real life and or for fantasy football?
I wrote down a few here. Just kind of things that I noticed. Was I was impressed with how the Dolphins performed against the Bills. The Bills really just came out and were demolishing everybody, even the former Super Bowl champions from a year ago, and just wiping the floor with all their competition. And for the Dolphins to really come out and even have Tua go down and to persevere and overcome that, and even pull it out by what 2 points, I think. I'm just kind of impressed with this Dolphins squad. I like the way that they're looking.
Yeah, that was. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, just it was the clear matchup of that week, going in. But like again, like it's been very interesting to see the Mike McDaniel offense. A lot of these games, I just don't know if like a Brian Flores led team is going to come back and beat the Ravens or
Hmm.
stick with the Bills the way that they did last week. So it's just really cool to see. So I'm with you there. A very exciting team. Um, just in the current moment, but also moving forward, it's just really good to see to have his like potential realized. Of course, with
Hmm.
the added weapons of Tyreek Hill and company. So, yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, so that kind of hinges off of another point that I had written down here. The Dolphins and the Eagles did beat division rivals to remain the only undefeated teams across the league, while the Las Vegas Raiders are the only 0-3 team. We knew that there's going to be a lot of interesting competition in the AFC West. But I did not expect the Raiders to come out 0-3. I think the beginning of the Josh McDaniel era has been disappointing to say the least. But I don't know. I just thought that there was better like defensive talent on that side, but they just seem to be a a defensive unit that you're just going to be starting as many players as you can from like the fantasy football perspective. So that's been very fascinating to
Yeah,
see
I'm
here.
like you. I never want from this before the season. I never would have expected the Raiders to go 0-3. They just have too much talent not to have won by now. You know what I mean? I just I feel like they're really doing Devontae Adams a disservice the way they're using him. He's getting a lot of targets, but he's getting short targets, short yardage. He's hardly
Mm,
accumulating any kind of yardage. And to me, he was, I mean, all over the field with Aaron Rodgers. But we'll just kind of see how that plays out, anyways. Uh,
for sure.
the Something else that's been surprising me is Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Honestly, if you had asked me before season again, I would have probably told you that there's not a single second-year quarterback that was going to do even top 15, 20 this year. And
Right.
Trevor Lawrence and that offense actually come out surprising with that coaching staff change. So, and then J Rob coming off the Achilles and absolutely crushing it, killing it, taking that running back role completely away from Etienne, who everybody and their dog thought was going to just lead that backfield. Then Kirk coming in and proving he's a good security blanket for Trevor Lawrence to really just take that next step. It's far exceeded my expectations, honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah. When the announcement came of Doug Peterson getting hired, I was like, oh, like I really thought like that was a very interesting hire, both for Lawrence and just for the team in general. I was kind of thinking like, well, it might just be kind of like a slow process, just because that team just needs a lot of roster building, just to be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly honest, right? Like Lawrence could probably only do so much. But then at that point they signed Christian Kirk and they had all the draft picks that they had. But still, very impressive to beat a Chargers team. I mean, again, with a banged up Justin Herbert, still, I think is very impressive. So I think if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, you have a lot to be optimistic about, not only for just this season, but even moving forward. So yeah, I love that call too. Um, Trevor Lawrence was one of my bright spots of the week 3 big performances from the fantasy perspective. I kind of included Trevor Lawrence in with Lamar Jackson, who just absolutely destroyed. Derrick Henry is back after a couple slow weeks there. He just finally was able to bounce back, which is really tremendous to see. And Khalil Herbert had a monster game in only 3 quarters of play, of like full-time play with David
Mhm.
Montgomery getting hurt there. So we don't like that, but we like Herbert doing his thing, basically just leaving off of where he did as a rookie in Montgomery's absence. Devonta Smith just absolutely destroyed the Commanders, and then Chris Olave finally was able to find that connection with Winston for a 147-yard receiving performance. So touching on the David Montgomery injury in week 3, some other notable injuries other than Montgomery was DeAndre Swift, quarterback of the Patriots, Mac Jones, and then another running back, Dalvin Cook. There's a lot of questionable tags, from these guys. I think except for Mac Jones, he's most likely not going to be suiting up. I think that would be pretty unlikely. But we are now getting into this territory where it's just a lot of highly questionable guys, where you really have to keep an eye on it through the week, and that'll come up a lot more once we start breaking down the games. But going off of the big performances, there also were a lot of duds, including Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, Daryl Henderson, and Brandon Cooks. Cook still had the 7 targets, but only caught 2 of them, and just for a very lackluster performance. So, yeah, it's like every week of NFL action is just so insane and so surprising, but that's just what makes it so much fun. We think
Mhm.
we know as much as we know about it, and then everything just like changes like week to week. It's insane. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
that
definitely like.
after those first 2 weeks, they were pretty just bam, you know what I mean? This last week was kind of a little bit more laid back. Not to say that there weren't some just great performances, but there's still guys out there that aren't just putting up the numbers you want them to put up. And I'm
Right.
kind of waiting for that week for it all to kind of come together. So we'll see how things play out moving forward. But no, that was that last thing that I kind of had written down. You were going back over your big performances was Derrick Henry, and
Yep.
everybody, on Twitter and everything. From what I could tell, everybody was kind of questioning whether he was still King Henry and still elite. As a matter of fact, I even got asked on Club Fantasy's Start Sit show last weekend. You know, one of the questions was, "Is he still elite?" And my answer was, "Yeah, I believe he is. Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any reason to believe he's getting the volume. The only thing you're missing was the touchdowns for the first 2 weeks. If he got a touchdown, you're happy with his performances. He really didn't do bad. And then to
That's
come
right.
out and really get 80 some yards this last week and even, throw a little pizzazz on it and get 5 out of 6 receptions for 58 yards was just the icing on the cake.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Because in week 1, Dontrell Hilliard had the 2 receiving
Receiving
touchdowns.
touchdowns.
So you're just like, come on. But no,
Uh-huh.
I was very bullish on Derrick Henry going into the season. So for my own well being, I was very happy, to see him do well, because there was there were a couple leagues where I was not shy about taking him 3rd overall.
Mm-hmm.
If it was like McCaffrey or Taylor, I was very bullish on getting Henry at number 3, and then Justin Jefferson has his big blow up week in week 1. And I'm just like nauseous, you know what I mean? But
Yep.
but now it has kind of it has like kind of changed a little bit, as far as the outlook goes. But I mean, couple down weeks from Justin Jefferson, I'm not worried about it. But still, it is one of these things like for like my own mental health, like going into the season, like I'm just so glad like Henry had a big performance. But
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, the king is back for now. Hopefully he can keep it up for sure. All right, so we're gonna run through the week 4 slate, starting with some of the prime time games. We do have one unique one in this group. We do have the early Sunday morning London game. We'll get to that in just a second. So everything just kind of changes for that game when the waivers run, when you have to get them in like locked into your starting lineup. So that just be aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But we will start with the Thursday night football matchup between the Miami Dolphins at the Cincinnati Bengals. I think this is a pretty straightforward matchup or set of players for fantasy purposes.
Mhm.
I think you can confidently start Joe Burrow. I think you can confidently start Joe Mixon, Higgins, Jamar Chase. Outside of those big four, I don't know if I would feel super comfortable starting Tyler Boyd outside of multiple flex leagues, right?
Mhm.
But if it's just your standard two running back, two or three wide receiver, and a flex, I'm not sure if I'm ready to flex him just yet, despite the good week three performance. Anyone else on the Bengals you would feel good about starting?
It just kind of depends on the matchup for me, but Hayden Hurst is one that if you're really needy, a lot of people will fade the tight end position and pick something up early and stream tight ends all year.
Oh yeah.
Uh, if he's up, there are some teams out there allowing a lot of production from tight ends. I think you kind of got to pick and choose with him. He's not somebody I'm really going out of my way to roster by any means. I think there's a lot of uh, similar targets you could have probably picked up by now, and that's kind of where I've been anyways with that. But you kind of pretty well hit it. Tyler Boyd again, somebody you're probably not looking to flex. He's kind of going to have those up and down weeks when Jamar Chase isn't getting all of the targets because Jamar Chase is your perfect example of an elite boom or bust candidate. You know, he's either going to get all the targets or he ain't going to get any. And trying to pick those games out is mind numbing. So you
Certainly.
want to try to steer elsewhere, rather than starting Boyd. But definitely somebody that's going to come in and have his good games too.
Yeah,
But that's
I
pretty
think
well it.
Boyd. I think Boyd for me is more of like a flex when we're like thick into like bye weeks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yep.
on the chance that Burrow looks his way a little extra, I think that'd be fine. But
Mm-hmm.
we're still in these weeks where we have all the options at our disposal, unless you're really buried by injuries. Um, I just would be holding off on that. But I do like your point about Hayden Hurst because the tight end landscape is typically a kind of an iffy one, other than your big three or four at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think Hayden Hurst, I think, is an interesting play when you compare him to someone on the Miami side of the ball, Mike Gesicki, someone who I viewed as a just set it and forget it type of tight end, but we are having quite the roller coaster with him right now. Less than 2 points, like 16 or however many points, then back down to less than 2 points last week. Really, just an insane amount of variance with him. I don't think I would have the gall to start him. I would likely start Hayden Hurst over him. Um, but on the Miami side of the ball, I think if you have Tua, I think you could feel pretty confident starting him with just Waddle and Tyreek Hill alone. I think Tua it certainly has a safe floor. Really, the big question marks for me with this offense is the running backs, more
Mm-hmm.
specifically Chase Edmonds, if he's going to be able to get it done for you. So he's kind of often drafted as like a zero RB, like RB2, or typically like as a flex or top of your bench type of an option. Um, Very encouraged by his touchdowns in week three, but just
Mm-hmm.
still not a ton of carries and not a ton of volume, which you weren't drafting him for volume. But either way, because it's like the Thursday night game, you may need to get him in your RB2 spot. Would you feel comfortable doing that?
That's a tricky one because I
Yeah.
think the Bengals, if I'm not mistaken, I might have to look, but they haven't really been impressing too much on defense. I think that Edmonds' upside in the receiving game could play to his advantage in this one, and it seems like the Dolphins are really going with that hot hand approach.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that being said, if he's playing, let's see, the Bengals, have they allowed? They haven't allowed a whole lot to running backs, uh, and just in general. But again, with the hot hand thing, if Edmonds is going to come out here and prove his value in that receiving game, I think that he could prove to be a decent flex. Though I'm really really trying to shy away from that backfield if at all costs because it's just one of those things you don't know.
Yeah.
You can sit here and analyze defenses on their past performances, and you can guess who's going to take the reins and who has the better opportunity. But it's just kind of a toss up, you know. Nobody
Yeah.
expected Mostert to have the game that he did. I think it was week 2, and then you come out and Edmonds gets 2 touchdowns. It's like, where do we even go from here? So I
Yeah.
think he's kind of one of those that at this point I'd like to set him back on my bench for now and just kind of make him prove himself to me for another week or two if I can afford it. Though
I think
I
that's
think he will
yeah.
give you somewhat of a floor, just purely on PPR volume as a
Yeah.
receiver. If you absolutely need it and you're desperate and you need somebody there, uh, you could throw him in there and he's at least going to score you a few points.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed the correct outlook on Edmonds for this week. If you have him, if you have to, you're probably okay with it, but probably best to avoid just to see how things go here. But I mean, it is an interesting matchup. I think it has a lot of uh, shootout potential, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I would be a little bit iffy on starting him if I had to. I do have him in Scott Fishbowl, so in that kind of a circumstance, I might have no choice but to start him.
Mm-hmm.
But so I may just be taking the chance on him in that, but we'll see how it goes
Hey, I feel you
for
there. I've been
sure.
playing RB2s all year long so far. I had Elijah Mitchell go out the very first game, so Jamal Williams has been plugged in there
There you go.
ever since. So when
Yeah,
you got small rosters like that, you kind of really have no choice. And in that case, you know, Edmonds provides a lot of upside, in his potential and his abilities. So it might pay off. But if I have the option, I'd likely going elsewhere.
absolutely. No, I think that's correct. So now we have the early Sunday morning game in London between the Minnesota Vikings and the Saints. For me, I'm avoiding Dalvin Cook if I can. Really has not practiced, I don't think, much at all this week. He did make the trip, but I mean, he really has not practiced. So last week, the real questionable situation, well, there's a couple, but the one to me that came to mind was like James Conner. If I could start someone other than James Conner, someone who was very questionable all throughout the week, did not practice much, and then was it was just very questionable the whole way up until like it being like a game time decision. Basically, I did not start him in the spots where I could afford to not start him, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
actually was the correct call because he just did not have a
Yeah.
very good game. So in this case, I'm definitely avoiding Dalvin Cook. If he's out, obviously I think Alexander Madison is a smash start. I don't know though if Cook is healthy, if I would feel comfortable starting Madison. So that's kind of an icky one.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kirk Cousins you're starting in single QB in Superflex, obviously. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, I'm very comfortable starting them. At least for me, I think Irv Smith Jr. is a very interesting tight end. Again, just with the tight end landscape, I think you could do a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel any differently about those Vikings players? And is there anyone else you think is a fringe start?
No, I think you pretty well hit it right. That Irv Smith kind of plays into where we were going back with Hurst. I would even consider him just a little bit above Hurst, just for the fact that he's got less competition for the targets, and occasionally he's going to get one thrown to him when Jefferson and Thielen are covered in the end zone. Uh,
Yep.
but as far as Dalvin Cook, if he's not a go, I would feel confident putting in Madison if he is playing. I think I read somewhere that he has played through this shoulder injury before.
Hmm.
If he is a full go and there's no sign of any limited reps, I don't mind putting him in just because the Saints, albeit they have played exceptional up to this point. They have allowed a fairly decent amount of rushing yards to opposing backfields, 328 as a matter of fact, through 3 weeks. So you're
Okay.
averaging over 100 yards a game to opposing backfields, and Dalvin Cook is one that if you're going to give him a little bit of slack, he's going to take the whole thing. Now, what is concerning is maybe the fact that they haven't allowed but one rushing touchdown this year.
Mm.
So you're just kind of hoping that he's going to accumulate a lot of yardage, but at the same time, just kind of keep in mind of that injury. Alexander Madison averaged 19 points a game as a fill-in last year, so you're not going to sit him if he's going in there.
For sure, for sure. Now, on the Saints side of the ball, basically you have a healthy Chris Olave, who I think you could feel very confident starting, as far as I'm concerned, but perhaps as a flex play. Then everyone else is just unfortunately questionable at this time. Alvin Kamara, Jameis Winston, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. Like those are the big five that you would start of the Saints players. I really don't know that's really going to come down to roster makeup and their uh like Thursday, Friday, Saturday practices,
Mm-hmm.
because again, it's like if Michael Thomas is healthy, I can't help but not get him in my lineup, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
know the kind of
Yeah.
upside he has, and same with like Jarvis Landry too, but definitely a tier below. But obviously he has these big spike weeks as well. But
Mm-hmm.
if they really are questionable, and because it's like the early game on Sunday, that could really just jack up your whole day if they can't if they only if they are active but aren't like really part of the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it could just be another like Marquez Callaway, a sighting or
Yeah.
whatever. Any differing thoughts on the questionable Saints guys?
No, I think you pretty well said it right. If those guys are healthy, Michael Thomas, you want him in your starting lineup. He's going to get in the end zone. Jarvis Landry, I like just because he's going to soak up all the yardage for alongside Olave. When Olave's not having his 140-yard weeks, it's going to be Jarvis Landry getting most of those targets.
Yep.
Uh, Granted, Landry's more of kind of a desperation play at this point. I think for me, I'd like to see more games like that week 2 performance he had uh,
Hmm.
out of him before I feel comfortable really playing him. Now with Kamara, I'm still being patient on Kamara. I want to if you drafted Kamara in the second round, likely right, so second or third round, depending on kind of when your draft may have been. Uh, and at that draft capital, you can't help but at least stick it out for a little bit longer. He's producing, he's just not scoring, and he's not, with the injury to start the season, he's just a little bit delayed to kind of get a groove, I think, on this year. Kind of like a Derrick Henry, you were a little concerned kind of through the first couple of weeks how he was going to do, and I think he's gonna have a game eventually. I'm not entirely sure if it's this one. The Vikings have allowed 3 rushing touchdowns through the first 3 weeks, so that is encouraging if he's going to get in there and see all the reps. Now, if he's going to be kind of part time like he was, it seemed like last week, then Mark Ingram may be the one punching in the end zone, and I'm going to be over here cussing up a storm.
Oh, likewise, my friend. Yeah. So it's not a question of Kamara's ability, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a question of his availability, and that's just is what's really frustrating because even if they are deemed active, it's still we don't know
Mm-hmm.
how it's going to be implemented. And then you just get really very frustrated, obviously. So that's another one like Dalvin Cook. It's basically just going to come down to kickoff. But it's gonna be really hard to get them out of your lineup, especially for how much you had what you had to pay to get them on your team, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it is just one of these situations where if you do have very good options behind them, then it may be you can maybe take the chance of not starting them and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's gonna be
I,
very challenging for me to not start them.
yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think the only one that I really wouldn't, Michael Thomas, if he's going to be playing part of the game and he's going to be on limited reps, I think just because of the touchdown uh, upside, I'd probably sit him unless he's going to get all of the reps. If
Right,
in
right.
that early game, if I'm not one that's going to wake up and just be eyeing my roster from 6:30 in the morning, I wouldn't mind taking that chance. Uh, Kamara, like you said, man, it's hard. It's hard not to. It's
Yeah.
hard to keep him out. You want to hope he plays, but at that point, you just if you picked up like I don't know who's a good late round candidate that you could have got like a James Robinson or something that you might have for like a flex spot. Hands down, I'd throw. If he's sitting on your bench, I'd throw him in there for him this week or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think James Robinson, I think Jamal Williams. If Swift
Mhm.
doesn't go, I think both of those guys, I would feel much more comfortable starting over Kamara just because of the question marks there.
Yeah, and they'd be like more likely to be on the same team, just kind of with the difference in draft capital. They'd be a lot later in the draft. You could likely have both of them.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. All right. So keep your eyes on the questionable Saints here as they finish out the week in practice. Sunday night football game. We got your Kansas City Chiefs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Although that game may be played in Minnesota, so we'll have to see how that goes. That's kind of an interesting curveball there. In this matchup, I mean, I can't not play Patrick Mahomes. He's going to be a starter. Couple down weeks, I don't care. He's going to be a starter for me. Travis Kelsey, he's going to be a starter for me. Um, I would love to hear your thoughts on the wide receiver core in a second. I actually don't love Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this matchup. He obviously has been fantastic. Obviously, still part of a pretty annoying committee. I think
Mhm.
only having played, I think, 40% of the snaps once in the 3 games so far, but he has been phenomenal with his opportunities. It's just the Buccaneers defense is really tough against running backs. So again, he's another one that's just going to be hard to not play. But in this particular week, I would definitely would manage my expectations with CEH. Um, Thoughts on him and the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers?
I I am a Chiefs fan, but believe it or not, since out of the gate when he just kind of really came in and stunk it up for us, man, I just had a bad taste in my mouth for Clyde. I'm not one for fantasy to go out and get those guys that you got to guess on every week. I just go ahead and avoid that headache altogether. All your J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, I'm not for
Yeah.
messing with the headache that's been their entire careers, and he's just kind of been one of those guys that I've just avoided. And against a tougher defense, I'm not really so you're kind of hoping for a touchdown at that point, and I'm not really convinced, unless they throw that little shuffle that Andy Reid likes to do. But
Oh yeah.
that's kind of been textbook Kelsey too at the same time. So you just don't know with that backfield. And I even heard or read somewhere that McKinnon's been taking more snaps than him on a game to game basis. So just a lot of red flags. He has done really well with what he's with his role in the offense. But that's the thing about Andy Reid is he knows what role his guys need to have, and he gives those guys the exact role and nothing more. Like everybody kind of has their position and what they do on the field, and they just kind of stick with it. It's like you perfect your craft, and that's kind of what Andy Reid has each of his players do. Uh, and as far as like the wide receivers go, I'm still feeling okay with putting Juju in their flex. The
Yeah.
volume and yardage is encouraging. I think it's really only a matter of time before he finds the end zone and really just gets comfortable there as well. A lot of people are panicking on him. MBS is not really one that I would. He's just kind of someone you're putting in the back of your lineup and hoping for a good bye week fill-in. But I'm still feeling good about Juju moving forward. I think it's only better things from here, at least with this offense.
I would agree with that. Yeah, so I would still would remain confident in Juju Smith-Schuster, and then like the rest of the guys behind him, I think are fine to hold on your rosters. Maybe MVS has more um, like DraftKings, upside there, but
Mm-hmm.
if I have to start him in like a weekly lineup set, I'm just going to kind of hold my nose and then press submit, but really only if you're thick into the woods with like bye weeks and injuries, I don't want to have to rely on him. But he is just kind of like a lottery ticket, in the
Mm-hmm.
case that there are some injuries or whatever, obviously, I mean, he could blow up an entire game. He's kind of like Sean Jackson in that way, right? Um, but yeah, so I think the Chiefs are pretty straightforward. We both are kind of little gun shy on CEH, but still bullish on Mahomes, Kelsey, and Juju. So I like that. And the Buccaneers, really, I can't help but just play Mike Evans. So he's just a staple in the starting lineup. I think
Mhm.
Leonard Fournette as well. Um, although Tom Brady, I really don't know. I think I'm avoiding him here if I can help it. He's the quarterback 27 on the season so far, and again, it's because of a lot of the injuries in the offense as well. But he just, I don't know, he just has not looked like the same Tom Brady. I mean, he's still for like fantasy purposes, right?
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. He
passing
doesn't look
volume
like the
isn't
GOAT.
there. That's right. Yeah. The passing volume isn't there, and obviously the overall stats aren't there to really have him in a single quarterback league. I absolutely think you can bench him. I think he's fine as a QB2 in Superflex, but definitely would avoid him if at all possible. Um, agree with that statement
Yeah,
there?
generally. I picked up Tom Brady honestly in one of the IDP guys tournaments, and
Yeah.
oh, man, it's really been a disappointment to this point, honestly.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I don't think the Chiefs have played an opponent that scored less than like 20 points to this point. So, it is encouraging to know at least that he's going to have opportunities. Somebody's going to be scoring touchdowns. I think Leonard Fournette will see the end zone likely. Uh, you want to start your Mike Adams or not Mike Evans, uh, and I don't even know who's healthy at this point in behind him. You got Russell Gage. You have Denzel Perriman. I don't know if is Julio healthy or Godwin at
So
this point.
he was out last week. I think he still is kind of questionable going into this week. They signed Cole Beasley. They still
Right.
got Scotty Miller, Rashad Perriman. And so it's like just a lot of like random guys, basically. Obviously Beasley has had moments of like PPR upside and stuff, but again, if Godwin is out, I still like Julio if he's healthy. Overall, but
Mhm.
still, just with how spotty he's been with his own health, it's like I'm not really in any rush to get him into a starting lineup either. So it could just continue to be the Mike Evans show. You just like
Right.
business as usual as long as he's not suspended. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
like he was last week. But yeah, it's just kind of a mess. For fantasy purposes outside of just Fournette and Evans. Like I think Brady is really missing Gronk if I'm being honest.
Hmm.
So yeah, not having that reliable like tight end presence in the red zone and just to kind of keep the chains moving, I think perhaps that was a very prominent key to his success, from a fantasy standpoint. I don't know. But
Right.
but I mean obviously not having Chris Godwin is a really significant factor as well. So yeah, so that's an interesting one, and that'll be on a Sunday Night Football, as mentioned. But yeah, so it'll be interesting if that's in Minnesota or if things are okay, enough at that point in Florida, and hopefully everyone in Florida is doing okay. The coverage of the hurricane has been horrifying, so hopefully, everyone has gotten out, and then the damage is minimal. But I mean, it doesn't look pretty. So Monday Night Football, we have the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. Another really interesting matchup here. Two division teams who know each other well, right? On the 49ers side of the ball, we got you got the running back Jeff Wilson, who I would feel comfortable as a starter just based on a volume play. Tough matchup against the Rams front seven. But I would still would be all right starting him. I'm still gonna ride it out with Debo Samuel. If I have George Kittle, I'm starting him. Um, some guys on the fringe though, like as a quarterback too, you could consider Garoppolo perhaps as a flex play, perhaps. Brandon Ayuk. I don't think the Rams secondary is really too much of a shy away point at this point. Thoughts on Ayuk and Jimmy G?
Uh, yeah, I think with Jimmy G, I think this offense kind of gets back to where they were kind of last year. Which I
Yeah,
think in turn will actually bring Ayuk's value a little bit up. So having him in there at that flex spot, I don't mind. Kittle, if he's healthy, no doubt, you're putting him in there.
Yeah.
Now Jeff Wilson, it's just kind of one of those you really don't want to unless you have to, and that's literally
Okay.
just based on pure volume. Just
Right.
because you're 49ers running backs, whoever's starting is going to get the touches. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of whether they do anything with it. And Jeff Wilson's one that's going to run for 150 yards, or he might give you 3 or 4 weeks where he doesn't get 50 yards.
Right.
So definitely somebody if you got to throw him in, likely give you a decent floor. But I'm really kind of avoiding him in starting lineups.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So to your point about the volume, that's kind of is why I would be a little bit more comfortable with them. But you are right though, where he'll have these big weeks and then these kind of poor weeks. So it's just that's always is on the table for
I think a
sure.
full PPR league, you could probably feel comfortable just based on volume, probably sticking him in there at the flex.
That makes more sense. The PPR aspect of it for sure. The LA Rams, Cooper Cup, you're starting him like no matter what. But kind of a lot of fringe guys here, right? So I think Matthew Stafford, you could pretty comfortably start him, especially in like a super flex league, kind of borderline in a single QB league. But again, if he's throwing the Cup, I think Cup will do enough to make it to make it worth starting Stafford. But then you have guys like Allen Robinson and like Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, just kind of a mess there, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
at this point that they kind of seem like those heavy bye week type of flex plays or starters, but really not guys I really want to be hanging my hat on week in and week out in these weeks here where we have all the options at our disposal. Obviously, we like the Cam Akers touchdown of last week, but then he follows it up with a fumble. It's like, you got to be kidding me, And then
Yep.
Daryl Henderson just does not get involved much in that last game. So it's very bizarre. Um, do you think you would feel comfortable starting Cam Akers or like an Allen Robinson out of this offense?
And Allen Robinson probably a little more comfortably,
Okay.
just because he is that second option behind Cooper Cup. Uh, Now, with Cam Akers, the backfield, you just don't know week to week. And wasn't it the first game of the year? Obviously, Cam Akers, I think, was still coming off injury. He was a little up in the air, but Daryl Henderson took the reins. And I think in week 2, it was still Daryl Henderson. Week 3, you finally saw Cam Akers. So it's another one of those backfields where you just kind of, who's going to have the hot hand this game? And you really don't know.
Right.
Because Daryl
Right.
Henderson did excellent last year as a
That's right.
replacement. Matter of fact, I think he was even top 15 in like yards per game. Now he didn't play the full season, but you'd like to think that he's going to have more high end games. But at the same time, if Akers going to be in there and be involved, they're going to give him his touches, and he's going to be a thorn in Henderson's side. Just kind of one of those that if you can pivot away, you kind of want to. I've
That's
had
right. Yeah.
there's a one of our subscribers in the Discord chat has actually had the same start sit question for the first 3 weeks of Cordell Patterson and Daryl Henderson, and believe it or not, I chose the wrong one every single time. It was
Man.
Henderson. I chose Henderson the first week, and CPAT goes off for like 150 weeks. And then I was like, I think this week week 2. It's going to be CPAT, and Daryl Henderson scores a touchdown and gets in, and CPAT doesn't do crap. And then last
Right.
week, CPAT does it again.
Oh, he goes
I don't even
nuts.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to tell him this week.
Yeah. It's like whatever you're about to type out, backspace it and then do the opposite thing. And
Second guess
then,
myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Oh my word! And then of course it'll just be the first thing that you initially
Yep.
typed out because you didn't press
Naturally.
send.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. So it just drives you crazy. Definitely an avoidable backfield where I was very excited for Daryl Henderson, but again, just very unpredictable usage. So it just drives you crazy. But then again, a lot of these teams just do not care about fantasy football, that they just
Nope.
want to do what's best for the team in those moments or in those drives, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense, and we can only control we can control. But the point is that it's still a very good offense. You still want to have these pieces of this offense, but definitely avoid them, like you said, where you can. So I would agree with you there until you're deep into the bye week Woods for sure. So we're going to take a break from the game previews, and we're going to go through some listener questions here. First one is a super flex question from friend of the podcast at It's Just Fantasy _. He asks, he needs one QB for his QB2 in a super flex league. His options are Justin Fields, Matt Ryan, and Jimmy G. So we just talked about Jimmy Garoppolo against the Rams. Matt Ryan is going up against the Tennessee Titans, and Justin Fields is going up against the New York Giants. Which way would you lean here, Axton?
I think of these three, I'm probably going with Matty Ice this week. I know he kind of had a little bit of a down week last week. He didn't even score, didn't even throw for a touchdown, I don't think. But this week he's playing a Titans defense who has allowed over 800 passing yards to this point. They're one of the more generous defenses. And on top of that, they've also allowed 8 touchdowns to quarterbacks. So I think Matt Ryan comes back through and has a bounce back game this week. And if you even want to go so far as to look at like Fields and Jimmy G, Justin Fields isn't even throwing the ball more than 15, 17, 19 times. How can you expect? I know he's got that rushing upside, but in terms of, even if you go there at this point in the season, he hasn't rushed for any more than 40 some yards, and I don't even know, he might have a touchdown. So again, it's just guessing. You're really living on a prayer if you're throwing Justin Fields in there at any point in this. I wouldn't want to even put him in as a QB2 until I see him get 25 plus passes a game. I can't. You can't throw him in there just hoping he's going to run the ball every single time and have a hell of a game. And then Jimmy Garoppolo would kind of be my second option if you're
Yep.
really anti Matt Ryan. The
Yeah.
Rams have allowed 5 touchdowns and over 800 yards as well to quarterbacks. So I mean, him or Matt Ryan are kind of have a similar opportunity. I just think Matt Ryan is going to be more likely of the two to really take advantage of that.
Yeah, so obviously I gave these questions to Axton ahead of time, but we did not share each other's answers. So in this case, I went with Matt Ryan as well. So that's fantastic. Definitely the order for me would be Ryan, Jimmy G, and Fields, just like Axton. So we are definitely on the same page there. Next question comes from Abdil H02486835. He's asking for PPR. Need one of these options: Devin Singletary, Jahan Dotson, or Richie James, who has a higher opportunity now without Sterling Shepard, unfortunately, getting hurt there at the end of the Monday Night Football game. Only getting 6 targets per game up to this point, even with already pretty depleted wide receiver core. I'm going Devin Singletary in this case. Axton, where would you lean between Singletary, Dotson, and Richie James?
I agree. I'm going with Devin Singletary. Richie James, he want to think that he's going to get that increase in volume from his 6 targets a game, but at the same time, you really don't know what this Giants offense is going to do. And there's no one clear cut wide receiver above the rest. I'd like to think it was Kadarius Toney, who to me is the most talented wide receiver they have, and he's the least used. So
I don't understand that at all. It's just unbelievable to me.
it's
But yeah, no, I'm with you.
mind-boggling. But so Richie James is kind of one I'd want to see a couple more weeks out of him, just see what he's going to do with the volume increase, or at least the snap count increase. And Dotson is just one that's playing a tough defense in Dallas, and I think the touchdown dependency is just shying me away playing that tough matchup. Now, if you're
Yeah.
going up against a very generous defense that's kind of letting offenses do, throw it well, I don't mind throwing them in there for a good chance at a touchdown or two. But I think just Devin Singletary is just going to kind of have uh, the better floor, and he ought to just have a better game this week.
Yeah, it's another game that has just like unbelievable shootout potential with the Bills against the Ravens. I mean, like
Mhm.
80 points could be scored in this game. You know what I mean? It could just be nuts. So I mean, he obviously had a really massive spike week as far as like pass catching goes against the Dolphins. So you can't always count on that, but at the same time, I like the point you mentioned about Dotson, the touchdown dependency is it's not always going to work out that way. And he is basically is at least third in line with the amount of volume that Curtis Samuel is seeing and Terry McLaurin as well. So obviously a great talent, but between these three options in a PPR, I definitely would go Devin, Singletary, and Axton would agree. So that's fantastic. Next question is from Ryan Will. Then a bunch of numbers after that. So we're not going to go through all the numbers, but Ryan Will asks in a standard league, CeeDee Lamb or Michael Pittman. So really just a real tough one here. CeeDee Lamb is going up against Washington. Pittman is going up against the Tennessee Titans. Um, I'm leaning Pittman in this one just because of the matchup against Tennessee. They are, and again, just kind of going off the point of Matt Ryan, it that they basically are having the same amount of targets per game. Pittman obviously missed week 2, but week 1 had 13 targets. Week 3 had 9 targets. Did very well with all those targets, and so has CeeDee Lamb for the most part. The 1 week was a down, or the week 1 was a down week, but after that he has kind of caught his stride with Cooper Rush. If it had picked between the two of these in a standard league, Axton, who would you be choosing here?
I'm going Michael Pittman. CeeDee
Okay.
Lamb's been he's one of those elite talents that I'm just not in on yet. And when you're talking about, you said standard league, you're really hoping for a touchdown. So you look at CeeDee Lamb's history, there's only been 2 times, I think, is if he's been in 3 years, he's going on his 3rd year in the NFL. There's only been 2 times where he's actually scored a touchdown in back-to-back weeks. And one of those times
Okay.
had a bye week in between. So,
Okay. Yeah.
he got a little technical with that one, but I think Michael Pittman's just, as kind of what I mentioned earlier with the Tennessee Titans just being a really generous defense and allowing 5 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks, and Michael Pittman is definitely going to be the one that's going to get at least one of those touchdowns. He has to. There's nobody else. He's got Ashton Doolin. He's got shoot, I couldn't even. Paris Campbell. None of these
Oh,
guys are really
sure.
going to come out and just get all the touchdowns. Jelani Woods, I think, had a couple last week, but that's not an every week thing. Michael Pittman's going to score, and if they're going to score a touchdown and Matt Ryan's going to throw it, Michael Pittman's going to catch it. That's kind of
Absolutely.
just
No.
where I
So
sit on that.
no, I love it. Yeah. So once again, we are in sync, and again, this was not planned. So that is just that's the direction that we both would go, just just independently. So once again, we are aligning there. So I love that. So the next 3 questions are all basically surrounding one player, and this is going to be the Brees Hall section. First, friend of the podcast at Ryan Minor underscore FFB. You may remember him from the Detroit Lions episode from back in the summer. He asks, "Am I crazy to start Brees Hall this week?" I'll just start by saying no, and then we'll move on to 2 other questions that involve Brees Hall. At J Moeller 05, another friend of the podcast from the Seattle Seahawks episode. He asks Brees Hall or Ramondre Stevenson in PPR.
I think I am going Brees Hall against Pittsburgh. Ramondre is just playing. Green Bay has been playing very exceptional, and they've been very stingy to opposing backfields. Now, Pittsburgh's front line is a lot more probably sturdy than their defensive backs. So they kind of offer a little more appeal to wide receivers, but I just think that uh, Brees is just going to be involved in that. The Pittsburgh defense is just real, and I think with Zach Wilson coming back, I think Brees Hall is really just going to keep adding up those receptions and really get around that front line and just get downfield. I don't think he's not gonna have near the opportunity behind Damian Harris, especially playing that tough defense.
Yeah, no, I do echo a lot of those thoughts. Brees Hall at this point of the season has 21 targets on the year so far, so it's a very impressive amount of pass volume. Now this was without Zach Wilson, so that was with Joe Flacco, and they just are throwing. But still, it is just showing, that Brees Hall is who we thought he was. He can do it on the ground, and he can catch passes when he needs to. Now, and Michael Carter's there, but I mean, obviously, Brees Hall has been getting much more target volume from the passing game. So in this game, I will also be going Brees Hall. I am a little bit shy of a running back going up against the Packers defense as well. Then the final Brees Hall question in this section comes from JCJ Dynasty, also a friend of the podcast. He was on the Pittsburgh Steelers episode. He is asking to pick two. We got Romeo Dubes, Brees Hall, Jerry Jeudy, or Gabe Davis. So two of these. I don't think there's a specification over PPR. I think that's just a safe assumption at this point. That's the majority of what people are playing these days. Where would you lean here, Axton?
Just right off the bat, I think I'm going Brees Hall and Gabe Davis. Uh, Romeo Dubs did have a great week last week, and he is going to be used a lot. But I think I'm just kind of tempering my expectations with this next matchup against New England because they've allowed, I think, the seventh fewest passing yards uh, to opposing quarterbacks. And that said, if the Green Bay Packers are really still hurting at wide receiver and the New England defense is stingy enough, I'm not really sold on any of the Green Bay Packers wide receivers. And we alluded to Brees Hall with his matchup in Pittsburgh. I like that a lot more so than I like even Jerry Jeudy in Las Vegas or against the Raiders. Anyways, the Broncos just really haven't done it for me.
Yeah.
Very minimal offensive performances, and I'm not willing to bank that this week is going to be any different. Uh, Gabe Davis again is just playing the league's worst uh, defense in terms of defending the pass, and so the fact that they've allowed over, I think it was about 1,100 yards through 3 games this season is insane. They're almost just letting quarterbacks come out and sling it for 400 yards a
Yeah.
game. Like that's incredible. So I think I even tweeted earlier. I'd start all your Bills, man. And Dawson Knox may even find the end zone this week. Gabe Davis is going to be one that he's going to have all the opportunity. The only thing I think that might hold him back is if the game just gets out of hand. But at the same time, when you're talking about the Baltimore Ravens, they have a terrible defense, but Lamar Jackson's just been that guy. He's going to keep them competitive, and I think this game's just going to go back and forth the entire time.
Yeah, it's kind of a game where the Bills don't want to let up on the gas. You know what I mean? That they're going to want to get to that at least 30-point spot to maybe push to 35, 37, even 40 to just keep pace with Lamar Jackson because he's shown multiple weeks now how he can just completely flip the game around. But yeah, so the only qualifier I would add with Gabe is he's currently questionable. Maybe with that like ankle that's starting to linger. But I think you actually did change my mind. I was going Dubes here, but I think Gabe actually makes a lot of sense because of how that game could play out. My initial answer was Brees Hall and Dubes because I think it's just a very uninspiring wide receiver group there in Green Bay. But again, like the Patriots are no cupcake matchup for sure. So I think all things considered, as long as Gabe is healthy, you're starting him for sure. So
Yeah,
I do
Dubes would
like
be
that.
right after him for me if Gabe Davis
Perfect.
is even if he's not looking great going into the game and he's not going to play. I don't mind putting Dubes in. I mean, the volume's going to be there. It's just I'm not. If I have the option here and Gabe Davis is entirely healthy, I like the upside this week. I think versus Dobbs or
I like that a lot. Yeah, I'm a little freaked out over the Broncos as well. Just typically a massive fan of Russell Wilson on the football field. Um, Judy, I was a big fan of him and Sutton and everyone else in that. It's just insane. Like it's just really just bad. It's
Real
just bad. It's a bad
disappointment from
to
what
very
the
disappointing. Yeah.
anticipation that everybody had coming into the season. It was like, oh, this blockbuster trade, Russell Wilson, so many times all pro goes to Denver. And really at the time, Denver, they have a solid defense. They had a great O line. They just never had a good quarterback. And to
Yep.
me, I thought this was going to be, the final straw. This is what's going to make them competitive. But it's
Yeah.
really been a bummer to watch.
And they are 2-1, but each game has just been like a real struggle. Like they just barely beat the Texans and they just barely beat the 49ers, who only put up 10 points. So it's just it's amazing. I really thought Russell Wilson with those two with the wide receivers. It's I just thought it was like a minimum of like 24 points a game. You know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
think they should have
And
blown
it's
out the Seahawks and
that's right.
who was it that you mentioned?
The Texans.
The Texans. Yeah, I don't see why they shouldn't have blown them out of the water, in my opinion. So the fact that they're staying close just makes me even that much that much more nervous.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, excellent. So, listeners, appreciate you asking. Hopefully, we can help you out with those difficulty decisions that you have to make there. So, we're going to run through the Sunday early slate of games. We did talk about a lot of these players already, but we will just touch on all the notable players at least for these matchups. First, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles offense is just phenomenal. It just looks incredible. Obviously, you're starting Jalen Hurts, you're starting AJ Brown and Dallas Goddard and Devonta Smith. I would be very bullish on them. Going into the season, I was a little iffy on Miles Sanders, but what he has shown so far, I've been extremely encouraged by. A little bit of a down week in week 3 against the Commanders there, but the game just kind of got out of hand, and they didn't really need to implement him as much. Still did what he could do with his touches. I would still be confident starting Miles Sanders here. Um, any different thoughts on the Eagles? This is pretty much all go on your Eagles, basically.
No, no, that's pretty well exactly how I'd see it. I'm a little iffier, I think, on Dallas Goddard. It is encouraging to see him getting
Okay.
involved, but I think it's just kind of one of those things that you don't really know when he's going to score that touchdown, and that's kind of what you're looking for out of Dallas Goddard. He's not just going to come out and get you 100 yards every week, especially with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. But I think at this point you can confidently start Devonta Smith. I was iffy like you on Miles Sanders coming into the year. I was kind of worried that Jalen Hurts wouldn't take to the new scheme and he would kind of try to fall back into his old ways and just kind of avoid, the backfield. But his usage has been encouraging, and yeah, maybe a down week in week 3. But just to see them using Miles Sanders the way kind of we all really wanted him to be used is just encouraging to see. And I think I'm confident starting him and throwing him out there every week, especially with the way this offense is running. He ought to get plenty of opportunity.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Now on the Jacksonville side of the ball, the Eagles defensive unit has been pretty great. I think you mentioned on the waiver wire show that not every week that the Eagles are going to get 9 sacks or 8 sacks or whatever
Mhm.
it was. But Lawrence has been playing extremely well. Christian Kirk has been playing extremely well. James Robinson, a lot of very intriguing pieces here. Even Zay Jones, who I think
Mhm.
was one of the top ads on your waiver wire show. Which of the Jaguars would you feel comfortable starting against a Philly defense that has now held 2 straight opponents to less than 10 points?
Oh man, this is.
It's an
I
interesting
think.
one,
I
isn't it?
think. Yeah, it is. It is because I like the way that Jacksonville's really been playing, but
Yeah.
this is going to be, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, going to be their by far their toughest test to date. Uh, so I see a little struggle coming from Trevor Lawrence. I'd imagine that him and Kirk probably connect enough times to make Kirk relevant in your lineups. I think Kirk is kind of getting to that set it and forget point in this season.
Oh, for
If
sure. Yeah.
if
Yes, we lost Axton there, but he will join back on. But what he was talking about was Christian Kirk and the passing game there. Here he comes. There we go. Yeah, so
Sorry
you're
about
talking
that. I
about.
don't know
Oh,
what
you're
happened.
good. You're good. Yeah, so you're saying that Christian Kirk is a set it and forget it type of a
Hmm. Yeah,
talent.
and I
Yep.
think after this week, if he can at least post up decent numbers, 70, 80 yards, and maybe a touchdown, I think he really has just solidified himself in starting lineups the rest of the season. Zay Jones would be one that might. I'm avoiding it if I can, I guess is
Yeah.
kind of the point I should make. But now with a tough defense, you're kind of I think it's safe to assume that they're going to be honing in on Christian Kirk. So if on the chance that Christian Kirk is really being either double teamed or is just not having a day, I think Zay Jones could likely be the one that reaps those benefits and sneaks behind the defense and takes advantage of the double coverage. Uh, and them being just kind of lazy on him. But again, I'm just not really throwing him out there in the starting lineup unless I just absolutely have to. And I think at this point, you could likely have a different flex to kind of pivot to versus Zay Jones this week.
And then in the backfield, you have James Robinson, who has been just fantastic at this point of the season, and Travis Etienne, who's been a little bit of a letdown, but still has been kind of in a pretty consistently mediocre like floor play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, any thoughts on the backfield here? I think at this point, I'm still pretty confident starting James Robinson. Still a little iffy on ETN, even though I still believe in the talent. Are you getting any of those guys in lineups this week?
And this week, again, I think ETN is just kind of one of those, if you can pivot elsewhere, I would try to do so. He's been very efficient with the touches he gets and the looks that he gets. He's doing really well. I'd like to see him pop in the end zone. If he could find the end zone, here and there, I think I'd feel a lot more confident in him, even as a consistent mediocre play. Uh, but I'm really not sold on starting him just yet until I kind of see him find that end zone. James Robinson, I think, like you said, is just kind of at this point, hands down, you want him in your lineups.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, kind of another borderline tight end is Evan Ingram. I think he's kind of on the fringe, um, still getting decent looks in the offense, just kind of up and down. Just like a lot of these tight
Mm-hmm.
ends are. So he still is in that like Hayden Hurst kind of it's such an interesting like line to draw. It's like the Hayden
Mm-hmm.
Hurst line, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think he's around there. I think I would still would be starting Ingram over like a Mike Gesicki type,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't necessarily be thrilled about it, But I think if the league is deep enough, I think you could be starting much worse. So seems like we're on the same page with that. We'll move on to the Cleveland Browns at the Atlanta Falcons. We finally had a big game out of Kyle Pitts. Finally, I mean, it wasn't like a huge game, but it was definitely what was big enough to just wipe the sweat off of our foreheads.
Mm-hmm.
If we got him. Um, so we like Kyle Pitts there. We like Cordero Patterson. Do you like him against the Browns defense this week?
I think now he's surprised us already this year. I think at this point you kind of have to. Uh, and if I came up with a Daryl Henderson CPAT quandary again, I think at this point, given Daryl Henderson's lack of usage last week, I'm going CPAT all day. So I don't mind him. The Browns got a little stingier defense, but they're kind of banged up right now, so it might take a
Right.
little bit of adjusting for them to get in sync. I think CPAT's still going to be the focal point of this offense.
Gotcha. Yeah, another player I'll throw out there is Drake London. He's been fantastic
Mhm.
to start the season. He's another um, borderline must start type of a player. Does the secondary of the Browns shy away from that, or are you just gonna roll with London either way?
With London, how the Browns are going to be a little bit stingier, as I mentioned. I think London's still going to eat up his yardage. He's still going to get his targets.
Yeah,
It's just how often he's going to find the end zone. I think is really going to be the only worry. So if you're relying on volume in PPR, I think he's still going to get his points. He's going to be again. the top, that big body receivers love watching him play. That's a big body receiver just out there bullying defensive backs.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean it's been great to see, but yeah, you're right. I think I would still be confident starting him no matter what. I just think the Falcons are just never not going to be in a position to want to be passing the ball a lot. So I definitely like him still. Then the Browns, I mean, I think this is pretty straightforward. I would still feel very confident starting like Amari Cooper. Obviously, Nick Chubb, you're not benching him. I think even Kareem Hunt, had the massive week one, then a little bit of a dips there in week two, and a decent week three there on the Thursday night game. Would you feel comfortable starting Kareem Hunt?
I like Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt just
Yeah.
has that nose for the end zone. Typically, I'd mention I'm not
Mhm.
one that likes to chase after touchdown dependent, people. But Kareem Hunt's just been one that year after year, no matter who's with or who's playing for, when he gets the opportunities, he scores, and he's very good at what he does. I don't mind. I'm not shying away after a down week. I think Kareem Hunt still gets valuable looks. Him and Mitch make up one of the best duos out of the backfield of any team in the league.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do hope that the Browns sort of work off of their success against the Steelers and keep tight end David Njoku involved. For
Mm-hmm.
me, he's a very startable option after what we saw last week. Like that potential has always been there, like forever, especially with Jacoby Brissett, who I kind of like as a sneaky
Mm-hmm.
QB2 this week. But I think Njoku is definitely a starting caliber tight end, especially just with the tight end landscape. Like if we look at that Hayden Hurst line, I think he's above it at this point.
Oh yeah.
So I would be very confident starting Njoku and just hoping that they just replicate how they were able to
Mm-hmm.
use him against the Steelers. I think that would be phenomenal.
Well, it seems
Uh,
like Brissett's really kind of getting in a groove there in that offense.
oh yeah,
As
yeah,
icky as it feels to say, but with Amari Cooper was kind of one that everybody was really iffy on coming into the year, whether he was going to be able to do it with Jacoby Brissett. But after the last couple of weeks, it's kind of back to back to usual. So,
that's right.
and then Brissett really just, and I mean, not absolutely lighting the world on fire, but he's doing better than I think what anybody could have ever expected. And he's probably one of those on your waiver wire that, especially this week, anyways, be one that, like you said, be a sneaky flex play. And if he continues this chemistry that he has going, Njoku's could jump from that low tier waiver wire pickup to uh, being put in your lineups every week. He has that talent and he can do it. But I wasn't really too high on him as far as expectations go until like Deshaun Watson returns. Then I
For
was
sure, for
really,
sure.
really excited about that. But it was really encouraging to see him get a lot of usage, even with Jacoby Brissett back there.
Yeah, it was rough. In Scott Fishbowl, I did bench him last week. He's my tight end too, but I started Fryermuth over him, and actually the real decision there was either the Browns kicker or Njoku, and I went with Cade York over Njoku. So that was just a painful thing to experience, but overall very happy for him. Obviously, but that's just in that tight end premium. Oh, that was rough to watch that play out on
Mm-hmm.
my bench, but
If it makes
either
you feel
way.
any better, I would have done the same thing likely with Njoku. He hadn't done anything to that
Right.
point in this season. So, and your kicker's at least going to get some extra points at the very least. So,
Right, right.
so I would have done
Uh,
likely the same thing.
Crazy. All right, so we have another NFC East clash here with the Washington Commanders at the Cowboys. I say again because the Cowboys played the Giants last week, coming off of the big Monday Night Football win. I think the Commanders. I think you could feel pretty good about Antonio Gibson still, with Brian Robinson still coming back. I think as long as he is, and we wish him well. Obviously, he seems like he's practicing again and stuff. So that's very encouraging. I think you can still start Antonio Gibson. Still a big fan of Terry McLaurin myself. Curtis Samuel, I think you have to start at this point. The usage has been very consistent and quite robust. Hard to not get him into lineups. Jahan Dotson is kind of like a border, like you're happy to have him on your bench, but definitely not starting him unless you really need to, as you alluded to in one of the listener questions. Logan Thomas is another what one of these tight ends that can have these kind of spike weeks and then just kind of disappear. So he's kind of iffy. I would not consider him a starter at this point, for this week at least. Now the Dallas Cowboys, Cooper Rush has been a pleasant surprise. Uh, Two starts and two wins. From a real life standpoint, from a real life football standpoint, I still would not be so quick to start him as a super flex play. Still like CD Lamb in that offense. I still like Ezekiel Elliott. Not thrilled about what he's done so far, but you definitely like the Monday Night Football
Mhm.
performance. You love Tony Pollard. I think if you have Tony Pollard, you definitely want to keep him in your starting lineup, just for the, I mean, just his explosive play is just an amazing sight, right? So you just kind of wish he would be implemented more, but I think he still has a good enough floor to be a starter. Um, I think Dalton Schultz, if he's active, he's a guy you want to throw into your lineups. But outside of that, I think it's just a lot of guys you're happy to have on your roster, like a Noah Brown in some cases, but not a player I'm really am wanting to start at this point. Any differing thoughts on the Commanders or Cowboys?
No, I think you pretty well hit it right. When you're talking about the Commanders, I like Terry McLaurin. He's getting that consistent yardage and the consistent usage. I just like to see him find that end zone a little bit
Yeah,
more. But nonetheless, a weekly starter and week in, week out. Curtis Samuel is kind of somebody I was really had high hopes on for this year. Honestly, I didn't even peg him to get 10 targets a game or be used quite as often in the ways that he is. But that gadget player role that he's got in that offense seems pretty solidified, and he's going to be heavily involved week in and week out. And if you snagged him up, you'd be happy this year. With I don't know. I'm borderline saying he could be a league winning pickup, to some extent. I'm not saying he's just going to come out and he's going to win every single week for you, but he's definitely going to be one of the most valuable waiver wire pickups of the year. Uh,
absolutely. No, yeah, it's just tremendous how he's been implemented. It's like
mhm.
we've always have seen like the potential and the upside, and then just kind of inconsistent there with his days in Carolina, and then last year just like the lost season, and again he could be like this year's like um CPAT from like last year. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Right.
Yeah, if you just believed in the talent and the potential role, it's like man, it's just been a really great thing to see. Um, but yeah, so yeah, so I'm with
Then
you there.
do you go to like the running backs? Antonio Gibson's one that I've never dipped on, even with the Brian Robinson drafting, because even now as things are playing out, I'm even more comfortable with that even after Robinson returns, just because how many rookies were drafted this year as technical RB2s on the depth chart where everybody had high hopes and thought they were going to come in with your Tyler Algier, your Spillers. People thought he was going to come in and take some looks from Eckler and things like that. And I think yes, they drafted him, and yes, he's going to have a role in this offense. But no, I don't think that Brian Robinson's going to come back out his first week, and nor did I think it would have been in week one had he not been injured. I don't think he's just going to come out and get 10, 15, 20 touches a game. I think they're more just going to kind of trickle him in there, see how he does, and yeah, he might get more looks and usage. But I don't think Antonio Gibson's been too damn good for them to just throwing at the running back over him after they just drafted him 3 years ago. He was a
Yeah,
top 12 running back last year. He's still top 12 even this year at this point. I don't see why you would set him on your bench anyways.
yeah. I mean, his performance has made a lot of those preseason quotes from the coaching staff seem absurd, where he's just
Mhm.
being used as like a punt returner and like not like the ideal like starting option. It's like he has played so well, so I'm really glad to see him like have success despite some of that kind of cloudy or like
Mhm.
fogginess, so that was just this endless like uh stream of like negativity around him. It's just like
Oh, I know.
unbelievable.
Every
But
time you get on
yeah, it
Twitter or
was the
something,
perfect.
it's a
Oh
new
yeah,
person bagging on him or pro Brian Robinson, and
yeah,
who knows? I may be wrong, and maybe Brian Robinson comes in, but and kills it. But I don't. He wasn't drafted for that, and he wasn't. Yeah, he's a great prospect, but he wasn't a first round. He wasn't going to be a first round uh, capital. So I don't think he's going to be all that much of a threat. He may grow a role, but again, a little bit of overreaction this offseason. Now, if
for
you want to talk
sure.
about the Cowboys going to you mentioned CeeDee Lamb. Yeah, the Ezekiel Elliott was actually one that top 10 every year he's played, man. But again, the
That's right.
thing that plays into that is he's always played hurt. Whereas, most of your players, when they're injured, they just won't play. But Ezekiel Elliott's going to go out and give you a couple mediocre games, and
Yeah.
so you score those points for the end of the season. And he's done well. I've been disappointed just kind of watching him, but I think you kind of got to stick with him as just pure usage and volume. Tony Pollard, I really love what he's doing coming out of the backfield and 100 yards in this last game, playing second fiddle to Ezekiel Elliott's 53, I think he had. It's really encouraging, and I can't wait to see, honestly, what they do, especially uh, with Cooper Rush or not with Cooper Rush, but with Cooper Rush at quarterback, what they do with
Yeah.
Pollard moving forward while Dak's out. So Dalton Schultz would be kind of one that, like, you typically want to start him, right? When he's got Dak at the quarterback, I'm starting him every single week. But with
Yeah.
Cooper Rush, he just doesn't seem to like his tight ends near as much. It seems like those
Mm,
balls are going to your Noah Brown and going elsewhere. But uh, of course, if you drafted him and their waiver wire is pretty thin for tight ends, you don't have anything behind him. You're putting him in there and you're starting him. But if you have another option, you matchup dependent. I don't know that I would be shy from setting him down. This at least he'd be kind of matchup dependent for me until Dak comes back. When Dak comes back, I like his every you want to start him every week. I think he's going to get that reliable usage and volume week in and week out.
gotcha. Yeah. So I think it's a very good distinction to make where Dak definitely elevates his role in the offense and just his overall potential output for sure. So I do like that a lot. Next one now this next game is a very interesting one. It's the Seattle Seahawks at the Detroit Lions. The Lions are a top three scoring offense across the league right now, which is just a lot of fun to see. That this game is another one where it has a lot of shootout potential. So I really like all of the pass catchers in this game essentially, as long as they're healthy. Like I know Amon St. Brown is a little questionable at this point, but um, I would not hesitate to start Jared Goff, especially in a 2 QB league. Um, Kind of a messy situation with DeAndre Swift. It seems like he's not going to be going this week or maybe the next couple of weeks. Um, so in that case, I'm all engines go on Jamal Williams for sure. TJ Hawkinson is just not, for me, he's just one of these like set it and forget it tight ends, even though it's been a little bit lackluster up to this point overall. On the Seattle side of the ball, um, Geno Smith is kind of a borderline flex or a super flex play to me. I would be very confident starting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Outside of them two, I really don't know if there's a lot of Seahawks I would feel comfortable starting.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Rashad Penny always has that potential, but just not a lot of volume, and it's just there's not really in like these game scripts where it's really going to be to his benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that just kind of gives me some pause. So he's just one of these like avoidable if possibles.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and Penny looked great last year and in this season. It's kind of been disappointing this year. But when you're talking about this game being a shootout, I'm trying to sit here and think of who's going to get the touchdowns. And yeah, you think Lockett and DK Metcalf, but with Geno Smith at quarterback, I'm putting a cap on like two touchdowns thrown from him.
Right. Right.
if he doesn't throw more, if he doesn't throw any more than that, I don't think they're really going to be putting up a whole lot of points. It's going to have to come from the backfield. It's going to have to be either him scrambling. It's going to have to be Penny, coming out and actually finding that end zone, or Kenneth Walker just coming out and doing something. It's going to have to be more than just Geno Smith. He's not going to be able to keep up with his opponent for this week.
For sure, for sure. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. We touched on Matt Ryan. We kind of like him against the Titans as like a super flex option, not necessarily as a one QB option. Obviously, if Jonathan Taylor is active, you're starting him. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but I mean it could just be like a maintenance thing. So I guess that's something to monitor. But I mean you're not benching JT if he's active. Michael Pittman. We've talked about Michael Pittman. Outside of those three, I think maybe Hines is like a borderline flex play, but like again, like more so in the like bye week woods, right? Kind of like the Tyler Boyd or like the Ramondre Stevenson players of the world there. On the Titans side of the ball, obviously Derrick Henry, you like. Treylon Burks is kind of a fringe starter, fringe flex, top of your bench. How would you feel about starting Burks this week? Is he someone you think you can rely on, or do you want to see a little bit more out of him first?
I generally like to see more out of him, but I don't think this Colts defense is all that great right now.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, of all the pass catchers, to be honest, I'm liking Burks' upside more so than even Woods and, I mean, Phillips especially at this point. So it's just kind of one of those. If you have to, you can flex him, but I'm not really looking to start Treylon Burks really at this point. Anyways, I'd like to see a little more out of him before I'm comfortable flexing him.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I would agree with that. Definitely he becomes a stronger option as we go later into the season, as long as he's being involved in the offense. So really outside of those primary like four players or whatever, we're really not playing or starting a lot of the Colts or Titans, just because there's better options elsewhere. Good to have on the bench, but really not starting a lot of them. Then we're going to move on to the Chicago Bears at the New York Giants. On the Giants side of the ball, Saquon Barkley, he's a must start. Outside of him, I really don't know if there's a single player I really feel all that confident starting outside of like deep flex leagues. In like some leagues I play in, there's like 3 flex spots. So like maybe then I would throw in like a Richie James, but that's what we're
Right.
talking about here. I'm not ready to start him in your standard like single flex kind of a league at this point. Then the Chicago Bears, as you said a moment ago, are just an absolute mess right now. Like Justin Fields is not even rushing that much. He's hardly throwing the ball. You really hate that for like Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney, a lot of these guys
Yeah.
who had just so much promise and like potential, like from like a volume standpoint. It's just not happening. You just can't play these guys. I mean, they're borderline even rosterable. It's
Yeah.
for no, not for dynasty,
For
but
for
just for
redraft.
like
Yeah.
redraft. It's really horrendous. David
I had a
Montgomery
lot of
to me.
hopes going in for Mooney. I was expecting double-digit targets on a gamely basis.
Oh,
So
yeah,
definitely
I thought
a
that there
dismal.
was no reason why he couldn't sustain like 10 targets a week. Because
Hmm.
like I don't think like the Bears were going to be in a lot of games. I thought they're just going to be
Yeah.
throwing. Fields is got to run and throw and run and throw. That's why I was really into him as like a sneaky like late round quarterback. But it has just been unbelievable. Like just the lack of passing volume is just really fascinating and sad all at the same time. So I don't want any Bears outside of the running game. So I still really like David Montgomery as long as he's active. Now, if
Hmm.
he's not active in this game, I am absolutely smashing Khalil
Khalil
Herbert
Herbert.
any opportunity I can. Had a an amazing game, as we mentioned at the top of the show, in relief of David Montgomery. Um, Even if Montgomery is active, like in this like Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara kind of a situation, would you feel comfortable starting Herbert this week?
I'm really only comfortable, honestly, starting Herbert if I know that Demon's not going to play a single down.
Gotcha,
Uh,
gotcha.
because we kind of have to remember Demon's going to be the man. And Khalil Herbert really wasn't all that heavily involved. He might have been growing somewhat of a role, but nothing fantasy rosterable up until this last week. And Demont had his first great game, even just the week before, getting over 120 yards on the ground. Demont still got it. He's going to be in there. Uh, but part time, if he's going to be in there half the game, I really don't like. They're really neither one of them are sexy plays, in my opinion. I can't
Gotcha.
confidently say that Herbert's just going to come out and take the reins. And as soon as I say that, then David Montgomery is actually going to be feeling a little bit better, and he's going to get a little more involved, and Herbert's not going to do shit. But
I love it. Yeah. Oh,
if I go start Herbert, David Montgomery, he's going to say he's active for the game, or no, if I go start David Montgomery, he'd say he's going to be active, and then he'll sit the whole damn game, and Herbert will go off. It doesn't matter what I choose; it's going to be the opposite.
that's right. He'll be active, but he won't play a snap, right?
Right.
And we just want to like bash our heads into a wall. No, I'm just like you. I'm like such a jaded like player. It's like it's just ridiculous. Just like anything that can go wrong will go wrong if I
Mm-hmm.
think it's gonna happen. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. But yeah, so not a lot of players we want to have in our starting lineups from these teams, even borderline have on our rosters. So aside from the obvious in Saquon Barkley. So now we go on to the New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've already talked through Brees Hall. I think we're very confident starting him. And again, in large part due to the passing volume, this is actually a very intriguing matchup with the return of Zach Wilson and what that Jets offense will look like with him back at it. I would still feel pretty confident starting Garrett Wilson either way. I would still feel pretty confident flexing Elijah Moore. Um, where are you at with him on that? Because I know he like really did well with Zach Wilson last year. Do you think they find that spark again this year?
I do think so. I think with
Yeah,
Zach Wilson, he did favor Elijah Moore, and I think this is where Elijah Moore's probably gonna. If there was a window to buy low, it's gonna be before this week because
absolutely.
when Zach Wilson gets in there, if he doesn't do it this week, it's only a matter of time before these two really develop that connection. Now, Garrett Wilson has definitely made a name for himself, but I think it's just an added weapon for Zach Wilson to throw to. And I
That's
think
a
where he saw the struggles last year will be minimized at this point. I'm not saying he's going to completely make that turnaround, but it lends well to taking that step forward.
Yeah, I think the point about Elijah Moore's buy low window is exactly right now. So I love that call, and that's very true. Another kind of sneaky tight end in this game is Tyler Conklin, or at least for the Jets, I should say, is Tyler Conklin. He's just getting he's getting a lot of targets, a lot of volume. So you will at least be able to hang your hat on that. Again, you're not going to love it, right? It's like you kind of want to hold
Mm-hmm.
your nose in and put him in there. But if you are just kind of desperate, if you were the Cole Kmet drafter this offseason, like I was in a lot of places, I'm happy to start Tyler
Mm-hmm.
Conklin over him at this point. So he's kind of a sneaky one for
He's actually
sure.
tied with Travis Kelsey on targets for the season. Third in,
Wow.
of
Okay,
tight
I
ends,
did not
tied with
real that. I
Travis
did not
Kelsey.
realize that. Okay.
Believe it or not, I looked that up on Sleeper the other day, and I was like, how is that even possible? It's just he hasn't really got a whole lot of production out of those targets, but he's seeing the looks. It's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because Joe Flacco was averaging like 52 pass attempts a game in the three games he played. So it does make a lot of sense. I just don't know if they're gonna. I'm very curious to see like what it's gonna look like with Zach Wilson in there. I mean, you figure well, there's no reason why they still shouldn't be throwing a lot, but still, uh, Flacco was just not handing the ball off. It was kind of
Mhm.
hilarious to see. But that is alarming that Conklin has the same amount of targets as Travis Kelce. That's really insane.
Yeah,
On
but
the
I think we'll go back to Elijah Moore return. I think that's probably where
They could
Conklin
level
takes a
off.
step
Yeah,
back. Yeah, and I
yeah,
think Elijah Moore is probably going to see more of those targets, but
yeah,
they will go for, he's going to do a lot more with those targets. So
for
yeah,
sure, for
I just
sure.
thought that was fun. I looked up. I just kind of organized the tight ends so far for the year, and
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
Tyler Conklin was tied right there, third, right there next to Travis Kelce. I was like, what is he doing there?
man, that's really nuts. Now on the Pittsburgh side of the ball, if you have Najee Harris and he's healthy, you're starting Najee. I think Deontay Johnson is pretty much a must start at this point as well. Even though the offense has been a little, I mean, we were thinking it was going to be better without Ben Roethlisberger. Really hasn't not been that dynamic of an offense. Like another just kind of disappointing situation here. But I still like Deontay Johnson just from a target perspective. Um, George Pickens obviously had that tremendous catch in that Thursday night game against the Browns. So again, just really hope he gets more involved in this offense, but still kind of iffy on having him be a starter. Same with Chase Claypool, another very good talent. So I think outside of Deontay and Najee and maybe even Pat Fryermuth, I'm not sure if I'm really comfortable starting any of these guys, but definitely happy to have them rostered for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was kind of the same way. I had a lot more high hopes for Trubisky coming into this season. I had him
Definitely.
rostered as a QB3 in almost every Superflex league, just because he's got Deontay Johnson, he's got Pickens, he's
It's got
got
tremendous weapons. Yeah.
yeah, Fremont. Yeah, he's got all the talent to throw to. It's mind-boggling to me that he hasn't made something happen yet. I don't even think Deontay's hit the end zone at this point in the year, which
Yeah,
is
no.
nuts. So yeah, I'm with you. Aside from, I mean, I'm still starting Deontay. I'm not really liking the fact that he hasn't reached the end zone yet. It's a little disappointing, but it is encouraging to see him get those consistent targets and actually turn it into startable fantasy production. And Fryermuth, I would even say, has taken a step forward even from last year. So I like Frymouth and Nashi. You're not sitting Nashi. So I think aside from that, that's probably about all the Steelers I want to start.
Gotcha, gotcha. Moving on to the Bills at Ravens. So we talked about this one pretty extensively. Josh Allen, you're starting. Lamar Jackson, you're starting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mark Andrews, you're starting. Stephon Diggs, you're starting. Gabe Davis, as long as he's healthy, I'm pretty confident in saying you're starting him as well, as you answered with the question before. An interesting one in this game to me is Rashad Bateman. I think you mentioned on the waiver wire show he really has made the most of his opportunities. It just has not been that many. I think you said he has had like 2/3 of his fantasy points come off of like two catches or something.
Yeah, going into week 3, he wait, was that right? We just played week 3. So yeah, going into week 3, he had 27 and a half of his 35 fantasy points came off 2 touchdown plays, a 50-yard and a 75-yard touchdown pass. And
Yeah.
I was big on Bateman as a year 2 breakout, especially with Hollywood leaving,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just been nothing but discouragement. I mean, I think Isaiah Likely is even competing with Rashad Bateman for a target share on this team, which is
Yeah, I've been really shocked at the lack of volume he's getting in the targets. Obviously he's makes a big explosive play like every single week, which is awesome to see. But it's like I don't know. I don't want to have to rely on that as a
mhm,
starting option. Obviously, just tremendous upside there, but I just think like outside of Mark Andrews, like there really isn't any rhyme or reason like who's going to be targeted more between him or like Duvernay. It just like drives you crazy. You know what I mean? But
mhm,
um, yeah. So to me, he's a very borderline starting option. Like I don't know.
mhm,
I think in this game there is a lot of scoring potential, so it might be a good spot to get him in there. But I don't know. Just week to week, it's going to be very matchup dependent. I
mhm.
think. So it's
In
just
my
sad to see.
opinion, yeah, at least for this week, the Bills have been really great. Their secondary has been incredible. but you can't. Lamar's been incredible too. I don't know. It's going to be a shootout and he's going to be slinging it, but it just seems like the only time he really wants to throw to Bateman is when Andrews aren't open and he probably don't have a running line. He just slings it down the field and sees that he's snuck behind the defense, and he just kind of lives on a prayer with Bateman. But
Yeah.
But that's kind of if I have to, I will start Bateman. I
Yeah.
have probably played him in a couple of leagues, but I've just been really disappointed in that target usage.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, so the running backs in this game are still a little questionable for me. I kind of like Singletary if I have to. J.K. Dobbins, though, I don't know still what to do with him. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's active and everything else, but just was not encouraged by what
Mm-hmm.
he did in week 3 there. And the Bills are, again, just a tremendous defense
Phenomenal.
all around. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I would feel comfortable starting J.K. Dobbins in this matchup. I think you can avoid him if possible. And differing thoughts there?
To be honest, I avoid J.K. Dobbins at all costs. I don't ever pick him up in any one of my in any one of my leagues. If you did pick him up, he's likely went at the cost of your RB2,
Right?
which it's just not a sexy matchup this week. If you can, I'd go elsewhere. I think there's again, kind of James Robinson could be one of those you probably picked up later, Jamal Williams or something off waivers. I'd really try to go anywhere else but JK.
Yeah, really my like price point of where I was going to allow myself to draft him was like if I could get him as like my RB3, like if I already had the cushion of like 2
Mm-hmm.
starters like ahead of him. So the one redraft league where I do have him, that was the situation. So I got him actually in the 6th round as my
Oh,
RB3. So I
that's
felt
nice.
I felt very good about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's just going to be on that bench for a little while here until we see him back to his rookie year form. And that's just that may be a couple weeks here of much improved usage and production. So yeah, it's just kind of an iffy one right now. Unfortunately, I was a tremendous fan of his, and then just the unfortunate knee injury at the beginning of the that's just horrible. But anyway, so definitely avoiding him against the Bills. Last one in this early slate set of games, the LA Chargers at the Houston Texans. The Chargers are a really funky one because Austin Eckler has been consistently mediocre relative to where he was drafted as, right? Like a top half of the first round, like pick 4, 5, 6, even 7. A case could have easily been made. They're right there in the middle of the first round, and just not getting the same amount of work that he was last year. Obviously, the touchdowns he scored last year were probably not sustainable going into this season. But even the bigger question mark of this whole offense is just Justin Herbert, unfortunately, dealing with the rib cartilage injury. That just kind of brings the whole offense down a little bit when he can't be as free to just blast the ball out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the Chargers for me are now just very much question marks until we can see Herbert, play comfortably and play well with his rib injury. Um, so, for example, would you feel comfortable rolling out Mike 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 Williams even with like a questionable Keenan Allen? I'm not so sure. I mean, in some spots, I would feel like obligated to, but
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I'm not really rolling out Mike Williams unless I know Keenan Allen is 100% out. Uh, and
Mm,
like you said, with injured Justin Herbert, I really don't want any part of Mike Williams with Keenan Allen in there, no matter how Justin Herbert is. Uh, so, but then again, and I've actually been thinking about like the Eckler situation where he's been underperforming. If there was a buy low window on him, it might be now. I'm not saying necessarily buy low, but at like a discount, you're not gonna get him for a couple of bench players, but you might get him for less than what you drafted, or might get him cheaper than what he would have been drafted for. And this week, I think is going to provide a pretty good opportunity for him to really bounce back.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, it's against the lowly Houston Texans, so this could be the big blow up week for Eckler. It absolutely could be this week, especially if Herbert is not feeling comfortable to throw as much as he is used to. So I do like
Mhm.
that call a lot. Um, Gerald Everett has become a pretty interesting tight end. I think he's definitely startable, especially if Keenan Allen is out once again. Now the Chargers still have a very good defense, a little bit banged up there with Joey Bosa, I believe, getting hurt. Is he likely to play this week?
I think they put him on IR. I want to
Oh,
say.
okay. Yeah,
I
I know
could
you're a
very
little
well
bit
be
more
wrong,
in
but I'm pretty
tune.
sure I remember that notification popping up earlier today. They put him on IR.
Gotcha. Is that a short term or long term IR?
I believe short term. I don't think it was
Okay.
a season ending injury.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you definitely are more of the IDP mind between the two of us, so I appreciate that insight. But still, still a pretty good defensive unit going up against the Texans here. It's still hard for me to not play Brandon Cooks despite his poor performance last week. So I would still would feel confident rolling with him. Another player who's kind of on the fringe is like Damian Pierce. He had a better he's been better obviously from week one where he just really just like disappointed people who drafted him to as their RB2 or as like their flex play. But for me, he was a flex play at best and like
Hmm.
more of like a top of the bench type of a player. So that has kind of shown uh to be true and just kind of a touchdown dependent type of a play. Although if he gets the volume like that, that's still pretty nice. Kind of like the Jeff Wilsons of the world, if you will. Would you feel comfortable starting Pierce against the Chargers this week in a situation where you thought you could?
I actually wouldn't mind flexing him this week,
Mhm.
and that's pretty well just because that the Chargers, albeit having a tough defense, it's been more centered around being able to defend the pass. And when they played the Chiefs in Week 2, Clyde, one of those middling players, actually had a pretty good game where I think he got over 100 yards from scrimmage, and I'm not sure, did he punch it in that game? No, he did not. Jerick McKinnon scored that game. But it just lends well to opportunity, and I think Damian Pierce could, especially with Joey Bosa out, maybe take a little bit more advantage of a little bit weaker Chargers defensive line. So
Gotcha.
I don't mind it if you have to for this week. Again, one of those things that really he's going to be probably one of your higher end flex plays unless you've got your uh like Jamal Williams and guys like that you kind of picked up later that really just turned out to be gems. I think this week he could have an opportunity to kind of keep building on what he's been doing so far.
Okay, I like that. Anyone else on the Texans you're interested in starting outside of Cooks or
Pretty much
Pierce? I
just
would think
Brandon
probably
Cooks.
not. Yeah,
Yeah, the volume for Brandon Cooks is going to be there. You mentioned Everett. He was one I like a lot. Or not, he's, on the other end of the field for the Chargers. With Keenan Allen out, I like him a lot more too. Mike Williams and Gerald Everett both if Keenan's going to be out. But if Keenan's going to be back, I'm just kind of tempering my expectations with the other two because I think it's going to be Keenan's game. He's going to get all the looks, and at that point, it's just kind of how he's going to divvy out the crumbs. Mike Williams
for
has
sure.
been one that just eats up a lot of targets as a second option. So he just may find it easier to throw it to Everett.
There you go. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so that wraps it up for the early Sunday slates. We are now going to finish off some of the listener start sit questions and then wrap up the show with the Sunday later slate, which is actually a smaller chunk of games. So, um, next listener question comes from Chimichanga44, who is also my brother. So, appreciate you asking a question here, bro. He needs two running backs out of this group. He's got David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Travis Etienne, and Michael Carter. He's going to be just kind of slotting David Montgomery in if he's active either way. That's kind of is what he's thinking. I think that would be wise in this case.
Hmm.
Um, Say Montgomery's inactive, though. Say he's just not going to suit up. So between Singletary, ETN, and Michael Carter, which two would you feel the most comfortable rolling out?
I think if Demon's out, I'm going Singletary and Michael Carter. I like ETN, but I think Philly's just been too great. I've had two. Their defense is going strong right now, and
Yeah.
I'm just a little weary on exactly how well ETN is going to do with that level of competition. So in this case, I think Michael Carter is going to have a little more favorable matchup, and he's been efficient as well with his usage, and the Jets are still going to continue to use him. As disappointing as it was to see Brees Hall come in and have to share duties, we were all kind of hoping he was just really going to take over the backfield. I really don't mind Michael Carter in this week over Etienne. And then Singletary against Baltimore defense that's just really reeling right now. I think he's I think he's just going to kind of have all the opportunity. It's going to be a high scoring game. I think there's just going to be plenty of chances for him to find the end zone and B, get involved in the offense.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah. So I went with Singletary. Then my initial thought was it was ETN, just because I've kind of shifted away from Michael Carter like mentally because of the onset of Brees Hall.
That's
But
fair.
still, it's like, whose floor do I prefer? Is it Carter's or ETN's? I think they're probably averaging around the same amount of targets per game. So yeah, so that's a real coin flip between the two. But I think the tiebreaker could be the matchup. So in this case, Carter would have the better matchup. ETN would have the more difficult matchup. So I love that thought process there. Now we have another question from at Tzag, and that's with two G's. He has a two-part question. First one is just straight up Mike Williams or Tyler Lockett. With this one, I'm going with Tyler Lockett. I think there's just going to be more favorable passing volume going his way compared to a banged up Justin Herbert. Who do you like between Williams and Lockett?
I like Tyler Lockett, to be honest. Now, if I think I like Tyler Lockett even if Keenan Allen's coming back, or if
Okay.
Keenan Allen is out, I guess is what I should say. Uh, this Seattle Seahawks Detroit game has the makings uh, of a high scoring game. Again, I
Yeah.
think tempering expectations. Geno Smith, I don't think is going to throw any more than 2 touchdowns max. But it's either going to Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett's really been in a groove lately, and I like his play this week against Detroit, who's really actually even just had Tracy Walker go down there, one of their top defensive backs. So just kind of lends well to a little bit more opportunity for him.
Very nice. Yeah, I like that. And then he had an IDP question here. I'm going to give this one to you completely. He's asking about Emmanuel Ogba of the Miami Dolphins against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, who have been giving up a lot of sacks lately. What can we expect out of Ogba and the pass attack or the Russian attack against Joe Burrow?
I think you don't want to get too high, get your hopes too high on this game. I know Joe Burrow's been sacked 5 times, or an average of 5 times a game, but at the same time, the Miami Dolphins have had favorable matchups defensively. And week 1, they had 2 sacks as a team. Week 2, they didn't have a single sack at all. And then week 3, they had 4 sacks. So the fact that 2/3 of their entire sack production has come from that 1 week, I'm not going to bank on such a high amount of tackles in this game. And with Ogba's low tackle floor, he's maybe getting 1 to 3 tackles a game. And if you're lucky, he might get a sack. But he's not one that's really he's not one that you can rely on with a high tackle floor. So I'm not putting him in hoping for just a massive game. If you're not typically starting him on a week in, week out basis, I'm pretty well probably going to leave him on the bench. I think if you take a look at our waiver wire show, we could probably help you find several other players that are likewise or similar pivot with possibly more upside. I think Melvin Ingram and other guys, Jerome Baker and people like that on the Dolphins defense are probably going to have a little bit better opportunity to go make those big plays in this game. I think I'm not like say if you got if you're not starting Ogba every single week already, I'm probably going ahead and leaving him on the bench. He's just I'm not going to throw him into my starting lineup just hoping for a massive game and like 2 or 3 sacks. Just because if you throw him in there and he doesn't get that, you're left severely disappointed when your bench defensive lineman or linebacker, I'm not sure what platform or anything they would have been playing on, but when your replacement on the bench is at least getting 5 or 6 tackles, you're really going to be disappointed when Ogba doesn't get his 4 sacks.
I like
So just
that.
kind of
Okay.
temper your expectations. Yes, it is an encouraging matchup. If you have to, the chance and opportunity could be there, but I'm not throwing him over a previous starter, just hoping for a hit on a big game.
Gotcha. I like that. A very grounded approach. So I like that. Next one comes from at Pipomatic. Uh, the lineup here is 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, and a flex for PPR. The running back options are Saquon Barkley, Damian Pierce, Jamal Williams. And the wide receiver options are Devonta Smith, Tyreek Hill, Hollywood Brown, and Gabe Davis. So basically, we're looking for 5 of the 7 options: 2 wide receivers, 2 running back, and a flex. Which 5 are you going with here?
Oh, let's see who I wrote down. I think I wrote. Oh yeah, I got Tyreek, Gabe Davis, and Devonta Smith for the wide receivers in this group.
Okay.
Uh, I just think that the matchups are a little too favorable to be putting in Hollywood at this point. Hollywood is only touched the end zone, I think, once this year, and this last week was probably the only week I think that he's even reached 100 yards. So I think easily for me, he's the one I'm sitting out of that group. And then Saquon, or not Saquon, of the running backs, he actually got a good group there. But I think I'm putting Pierce on the bench and I'm starting Saquon and Jamal Williams. And that's assuming that Swift is not playing. If Swift is back and playing full time, I don't mind. I don't know. I don't mind putting. Well, you probably couldn't put Hollywood in there, so I don't mind rolling Pierce out there in the event that DeAndre Swift plays and Jamal Williams will take the back seat there.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I like his options a lot as well here. Just like you had alluded to, I went with Saquon and Jamal, assuming Swift is out. And then Devonta Tyreek. I actually went Hollywood over Gabe, but I think the more we talk about this Bills and Ravens game, the more I'm thinking it might be better. But I just kind of like Hollywood Brown's target potential
Mm-hmm.
more than
He's
Gabe
seen a lot of
Davis's.
targets.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that would be like the slight edge I would kind of lean on. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean,
I think
Davis
Hollywood's going to
could.
give you a little bit more solid floor, probably. Gabe Davis it has a good chance to have a good game. This could be a shootout of a game, but Gabe Davis isn't one that's come in every single week and giving you those numbers or start worthy numbers, you know.
Right.
So case could be made for Hollywood there, absolutely.
Gotcha. No, yeah. So I think we are in agreement. Like Hollywood's more of a floor, and then Gabe is more of a ceiling play there. So do like that a lot because of the matchup. And then just 2 more questions here. Next one is from at Ox Grins. Pick 3 needs 1 running back and then 2 flex plays. Got Brandon Cooks against the Chargers, Khalil Herbert against the New York Giants, Brees Hall against the Pittsburgh Steelers on the Brees Hall question, and then see Pat against the Browns. For me, this would be Herbert over Hall and C Pat only if Monty is out. And then 2 flexes, I would be going with Cooks and it's just hard to go off of CPAT. Yeah, this one really just hinges on if Montgomery is in or out. So in that case, I would go Cooks, Hall, and CPAT. But if Monty is out, I'm going Cooks, Herbert, and Hall. I think I would be benching CPAT personally.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. If Demont is out, I'm putting in Herbert, and you pretty well hit it exactly kind of how I would approach the situation. Uh, Cooks, Brees, and CPAT. Otherwise, if Demont is out, Herbert put him in there. But I wouldn't even be opposed to, Brees has a better matchup. I would put Brees in there just because if CPAT falls, I think it's going to be a lot lower than if Brees falls and doesn't produce.
Gotcha. Last listener question comes from Mike _ Dowdy. He's asking Javonte Williams or Jamal Williams for PPR. So once again, we have another one of these situations where it just depends if Swift is out. So just for the sake of argument, let's say Swift is out and it's just Jamal Williams and Javonte Williams. Who do you like better for PPR?
Honestly, I never even thought I would be asked this question or have to answer it in this way at all. But I think if Swift is out, I'm going Jamal Williams. I think the touchdown upside and the value of his touches are just far too uh, necessary for your starting lineup. And I think Javonte, I don't even know if he's touched the end zone this year. I think if they get in the red zone, it's going to Melvin Gordon. So,
That's right.
And with this Denver Broncos offense, they're honestly lucky to even get to the red zone. If they are scoring, it's likely from outside the red zone. And if they're in the red zone, it's going to Melvin Gordon. That's just kind of how it's appeared to me anyways. So I think if Swift's out, I'm hands down going Jamal Williams, for, as itchy as it feels to say.
I will with Jamal Williams as well, simply for the fact that I think Melvin Gordon plays more of a role in keeping Javonte Williams back than Craig Reynolds would be as the backup to Jamal Williams would hold back Jamal Williams. So I'm going Jamal Williams too, but just the thought of saying that out loud is just like seems crazy, but it is a very good question. But I'd be going with Jamal Williams as well. So I like that. We definitely seem to be in sync with a lot of these questions. So hopefully, and again, we appreciate the listeners for asking the questions, but ultimately they will be pressing that lineup submit button. But I think we definitely help them out as far as the thinking through the question for sure. So I appreciate your input there, Axton. So we're just going to wrap up the show here with the Sunday later slate. Just 3 matchups here. First one, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. On the Panthers side, Christian McCaffrey, I'm still starting him. DJ Moore, though, I feel like I just have to start him, even though it's been a little bit disappointing. And let's see, outside of those two, I'm not sure if there's anyone else that I would want to start. Baker Mayfield has also been pretty disappointing as well. And then on the Arizona side, Kyler Murray has also been disappointing, and James Conner, I think, has been having some issues recovering from that ankle injury that he had to leave week 2 with, and then obviously the week 3 he was not very good. Just want James Conner here, just very concerned over him against the Panthers, not necessarily because of the Panthers, but just because he just has not. His week 3 really kind of scared me off of. If he's still questionable, it's still going to be hard for me to start him. And on top of the fact that the Arizona offense has been pretty shaky up to this point. Basically, we're just saying on the Panther side of the ball, I'm confident in Christian McCaffrey. I'm still going to be rolling with DJ Moore as much as I am frightened of that prospect. Then on the Arizona side of the ball, Kyler Murray, I would probably still roll out. Hollywood Brown, I would still roll out. Still iffy on James Conner. I think Zach Ertz would also be a tight end I'd be starting here. Anyone else from these offenses that you would feel comfortable starting?
No, I think he pretty well hit it right. I think James Conner's going to have a better opportunity to find the end zone this week and get back to kind of what his owners were drafting him as. Uh, who did you say he's playing the Panthers? The Panthers have allowed 2 touchdowns to opposing running backs as on the ground as well as a receiving touchdown.
Okay.
So at least it's encouraging to know he does get involved in the red zone on passing plays for Kyler Murray. outside of that, I think you hit it right with with Hollywood, Kyler, uh, and then on the Panthers side, DJ Moore with uh, Christian McCaffrey. Uh, but DJ Moore's also one that I've kind of been finding myself in a lot of situations where I'm either him or Christian Kirk or like a
Yeah,
Curtis Samuel or something like that for me. And honestly, unless he's just got a crazy good, favorable matchup, I don't. In that situation, I'm putting Kirk in. I'm putting Curtis Samuel in, unless matchups are just screaming otherwise.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's just really disappointing. He got the touchdown in week 2, but it just, I guess, like, Baker Mayfield just has not done him any favors. So we're just waiting for that QB to get the most out of DJ Moore still, but he's just too good of a talent to just keep on the bench. But again, if it
Mm-hmm.
keeps up, that there is definitely a case to be made about just being hesitant. I think also on the Cardinal side of the ball, Greg Dortch is a player who's like kind of come out of nowhere. So he's an interesting guy to have on your team. I just don't know about if he's really starter worthy, even though he has had a lot of success. Unless you feel differently.
I think he might have some sort of flex appeal at least till DeAndre Hopkins comes back. I
There you go.
thought
Okay.
going into this season that AJ Green would have been taking that role in the
Right.
offense, but it seems like he's pretty well stepped back, and it's Greg Dortch's now. But again, he's just kind of one of those players that has a timer on him, right? So whenever DeAndre Hopkins comes back, it's not going to look the same. I don't think Greg Dortch gets all those targets, and I think he just more has splash games here and there. But for now, I wouldn't mind giving a decent matchup. I wouldn't mind throwing him in there as a flex if you have somebody that's kind of similar as far as value in your starting lineup that has maybe a less favorable matchup. I wouldn't mind throwing Greg Dortch in there if you have to.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Moving on to the New England Patriots at the Green Bay Packers. Touched on this one a little bit. This game is a little bit different because Mac Jones of the Patriots is likely not going to be suited up. So now we have Brian Hoyer leading the way. Jacoby Myers was inactive in week 3. So pretty much as long as he's active, I really like him as like a flex play. Um, but really just the Patriots offense has just been like just kind of icky. It's just been kind of yucky. Is it is
Mm-hmm.
it is it Nelson Aguilar this week, or is it gonna be Kendrick Bourne like the next? It's just, like Devontae Parker last week. He had a lot of opportunity, obviously, without Myers there, but just a lot of players I really don't feel super comfortable starting. Even like Damian Harris and like Ramondre Stevenson, I think are spot start like flexes, but definitely with it's just gonna be one of these things like you want to avoid them if possible. Did you like either one against the Packers this week?
As far
Harris
as
or yeah,
uh,
as far as
I,
Harris or
I
Stevenson.
prefer Damian Harris over Ramondre. I think
Okay,
Uh, Ramondre does have his games where he's just going to be very efficient and they're going to roll with him. But I think on a game to game basis, they're going to start it out with Damian Harris. And if he can run and do what he does, they're going to let him do it. But occasionally, Stevenson's just going to come in and steal the show. So in a desperation play, I don't mind Damian Harris just because of his touchdown upside. If he's getting a lot of volume in any given game, chances are he's going to be taking a lot of those red zone opportunities if they can get there. That's also the thing is like with the kind of wide receiver room they have and the quarterback play and that just kind of the whole mix of things. You really don't know if they're even going to be able to get that far because Jacoby Myers is has been doing well and. But then Devontae Parker comes out and these other wide receivers come out and make these and have some decent games, but there's not really any players on this team as far as wideouts go that can really just kind of carry them all the way down the field every drive. So it's just
that's
kind of
right. Yeah.
a hit or miss. And if they make it to the red zone, Damian Harris is going to be the star of those red zone plays, in my opinion, anyways.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Another very disappointing Patriot to this point has been Hunter Henry. Like, what is going on there?
Mhm.
Just really sad because I'm such a Hunter Henry fan. He just hasn't done anything. Now on the Packers side of the ball, a little interesting. I'm still very bullish on the running backs. I still really like Aaron Jones a lot. I think AJ Dillon is always a threat to score a touchdown each week. Um, Aaron Rodgers, though, I really don't really think it's necessary to start him in like one QB leagues. I really think the loss of like Devontae Adams is just really it can't be just um um stated enough, just how much of a loss that is like for that overall offense. And even with the wide receivers they have now are kind of borderline startable at best. You like the touchdown with Alan Lazard last week and Dubes and stuff, but I don't know. Even with that, I that didn't help my confidence in getting Lazard into a starting lineup. But at least at this point, if the two of them just like emerge as like the main go to guys, then that'll be a different discussion. But there just doesn't seem to be as much upside in that passing game at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree. It kind of just seems the way that the stat sheet has filled out that Lazard has been the red zone target or the end zone target. Dobbs will catch a good pass or two, on occasion to help them advance up the field. But for the most part, it's really just using Aaron Jones and that backfield and AJ Dillon and AJ or Aaron Jones to move the ball up the field. And then
Yeah.
occasionally, like you mentioned, occasionally Dobbs will get a long pass and might turn into a touchdown or something and really help them out. But for the most part, they're really just kind of using that backfield as their anchor. And I don't mind AJ Dillon for the touchdown upside, the red zone looks he's going to be getting on the ground. But generally, AJ or Aaron Jones is going to be kind of the shining star, if you will, of this Green Bay Packers offense, and that's even kind of being generous because Aaron Jones is kind of being known for being boomer bust, very boomer bust. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, but I think he's really the only one that I'm hands down every single week starting AJ Dillon's even kind of in that flex opportunity for me. Depending on the game, he may not, if he don't score, he may not yield you a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah, it just seems to be one of these teams where they just seem to be better for like real life football compared to actual
Mm-hmm.
like fantasy football, which is what we primarily care about on this show.
Yep.
So it's just disappointing because they just have been such a fantasy gold mine, with like Adams and Rogers there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just Rogers is just tough to get him into starting lineups in single QB leagues with how they have been uh, throwing the ball just has been a little bit lackluster as of late.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously tremendous talent, but it's like Tom Brady, right? It's like when they just don't have they don't have the justification to get them into starting lineups at this point, despite being obviously very talented. So the final game of the week that we're going to be covering here is the Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders. We've already touched on the Broncos just being kind of a dumpster fire as far as what their offense has looked like. Still good pieces there. I mean, it still is going to be hard for me to not play Russell Wilson, just knowing what he's throwing, like who's in that offense. But as a super flex, I think he's definitely is borderline not usable in single QB leagues. Um, I still fairly stubborn. I still am such a big fan of Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy, but it is just kind of brutal, like the way that the ball has been um, implemented. The whole offense has just looked like kind of crazy. In this particular matchup, I'm much more into Javante Williams and Melvin Gordon. To be honest, against the Raiders and the kind of lackluster defense that they've displayed at this point. Um, Melvin Gordon, I think, can be a flex play if you need him. You're not going to feel great about it. You're really hoping he gets a touchdown there, but I think that this could be an interesting spot start for him. Um, Anyone on the Broncos side other than like Javante Williams, would you feel comfortable starting this week?
Cortland Sutton, I'm with you there. I honestly wouldn't even mind Cortland Sutton.
Yep.
as a consistent flex play or even like a wide receiver three or something like that. Just because he is of this offense, his usage and volume has been consistent.
Yeah.
I think the only thing else you could ask for is that he finds the end zone, but he's getting 70 plus receiving yards every single game, and he's putting up good, solid fantasy numbers that you like to see. So there is a diamond in the rough, and I think, like you mentioned with Russell Wilson, he's borderline QB2 for, or he's a QB2 for super flex and borderline playable for single QB. But I think it's kind of only a matter of time. I hope, crossing my fingers, before they really start to kick things off with this offense. I think there's just too much talent for them to be struggling like this.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I really hope that they can turn it around. But yeah, I mean,
Their
it.
record suggests otherwise, but they're just ugly ball.
Yeah. No, it's really insane. I think just for like for Nathaniel Hackett's sake, I hope that like that there can just be better, decisions being made and just better production overall. But it's really really frightening. Now on the Las Vegas Raiders side of the ball, you're not benching Devontae Adams, you're not benching Darren Waller. I think Josh Jacobs is kind of borderline. He's basically has disappointed, but it's going to be hard for me to not get him in a starting lineup at this point. Um, and I think like Derek Carr is another one of these where like there obviously is great pieces in this offense, but it just hasn't been like the most consistent. Where he just was like, well, he's just like right around Kirk Cousins, where I think Kirk Cousins has just done a little bit more here. Would you still feel comfortable starting Derek Carr in like a single QB league?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have him
Yeah,
starting in a redraft league of mine because he's come out and put up 20 or so fantasy points each week, I think. And I think that's even going to be a bare minimum for him. I think.
sure. Yeah, so Derek Carr definitely has good weapons to throw to. Let's just pull up his player card here. Okay, yeah, so just under 15 points in week one, uh, 19 points in week two, almost 21 points in week three. So I think you're right. I think Derek Carr has been playing a little bit better than I was giving him initial credit for there. Um, Two touchdowns in every game, uh, and four interceptions overall. So no, I think I just kind of overlooked him a little bit there. So no, I'm with you. I think he definitely is a startable option in single QB leagues. I think Josh Jacobs is kind of an interesting one. Would you feel comfortable starting him?
Maybe flex play. I think
Yeah,
he's going to see plenty of volume. He's just not really putting up the numbers like what he has in the past and like we were all hoping for.
right.
Kind of one of those I'm trying to avoid. If I have to, I'll play him, but uh, definitely not a sexy choice there.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Anyone else in this Las Vegas offense? I know like Matt Collins had like the big game
He's an
last week, and yeah,
interesting stash just because of his usage, and he's gotten consistent volume. He's up there in about every category, at least at this point in the season after last week. Uh,
right.
but I'm not gonna feel comfortable starting him until I really see a role carved out. And I think there's just too much talent ahead of him for him to really become fantasy relevant beyond short spurts here and there. And at that point, it's just a guessing game like anybody else on waivers.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of hoping that Hunter Renfro like gets his act together a little bit more here
Hmm.
because I think he still has target upside,
I
But
agree.
I mean, he had the unfortunate fumble in week two, I believe it was, and had a concussion. So it's just kind of a series of like unfortunate events there
Hmm.
with him. But uh, I think there's no reason why he couldn't be just heavily used in this offense for sure. But then again, it's like there's a lot of Waller, there's a lot of Adams, there's a lot of Renfro. It's like I don't know,
Hmm.
it might be kind of like up and down week to week. So he's another guy I'm still fine stashing, but definitely not ready to start yet, especially if he is questionable or not active on game day. So yeah, I think we nailed it. I think we hit all the matchups and gave a lot of the listeners a lot of good expectations for all these players. So I appreciate you coming on, Axton, and just
My
want you
pleasure.
to now. Oh yeah, absolutely. Now I want you to just remind the good people here where they can find you and what you are going to be working on this year.
I'm just kind of right now tending to fatherhood, so I might put out a piece here and there as the season goes along. But you can find any of my stuff at the idpguys.org website. I have an author page over there. You can find any of my articles. And then also, if you want to get more involved, become a subscriber, get in the Discord. I'm always in the Discord looking to answer questions and just interact in general, or reach out to any of us IDP guys on Twitter or whatever platform, YouTube. Ask your questions wherever. We're all more than willing to engage and be there for our subscribers and really just anybody in general. So yeah, feel free to go ahead and subscribe and follow your IDP guys.
I love that. I love that. I ask you about you and you put it on the rest of the staff. So I love that. I love the humility. But I would recommend you reach out to Axton. He's got a great football mind and he's always available to answer your questions. So that's awesome. So once again, I appreciate you coming on, Axton, and just best of luck with fatherhood. It's a very exciting time that you find yourself in. So best of luck there and best of luck with your fantasy teams and with your Kansas City Chiefs, obviously. And for everyone else, thanks for listening, and hopefully we can steer you in the right direction here as we're trying to optimize your lineup. So from Axton and Steve, that was the show today. So best of luck and keep climbing.